Welcome back to Raised by Giants, where we talk all things spirituality. I'm Ryder Lee. Tonight we have returning guest Shane the Ruiner speaking about more secret space program and super soldier foolery and much more. Join us now. Shane the Ruiner, the government agent, Illuminati agent, disinformation agent, CIA agent, the propagandist sent to destroy the SSP and the super soldier community. Welcome back to the show. It's good to see you. Did I miss anything in that introduction? Anything you wish to add?
Where did it start? I think it was Dark Alliance first. Because remember when Corey first started, he was calling the Alliance, right? So I was the Dark Alliance. He had done this whole blog post about this highly trained Illuminati agent sent to the SS or sent to the alternative community to discredit him. And that was written, before he figured out that Shane, the guy that was his friend or thought that he was his friend and would talk to him on a regular basis, was the ruiner. So he was actually like, while he was writing that blog, he was like complaining to me about this ruiner guy. So, yeah, I mean, that's how far back this all goes. Starts with me. So, over the course of this, you're probably going to see me get a little frustrated with a gentleman, and my frustration is long overdue in a way because I've been listening to people try to convince me of this nonsense for well over 10 years now, and I'm just done with it. And we'll go into that more, but.
Yeah, I don't know if I was talking about you in that introduction or if I was talking about me. I'm gonna get, I'm gonna give myself a new title. I'm gonna call myself Ryder the Wrecker. It's got a nice ring to it, right? Double team.
Wow.
Shane the Ruiner and Ryder the Wrecker. Yeah.
Yep. Wow.
But it's getting so ridiculous, dude. And I just want to thank you for coming on this evening. And we got an amazing show for you guys here tonight. We're going to be providing some commentary on a show that you did with Archeum Raw, which I think will shed some light on the situation and the nonsense that's going on. But before we get into that, you just mentioned a little bit about this interaction that you have between him and you. But how did this interaction first develop? How did it start? Because I know that you had a couple of dates that you were planned to speak with him. He wanted to speak with you, and then he canceled on a couple of those dates, and you guys finally got it together. So how did this happen?
Well, I guess in terms of like, being disrespectful, right off the bat. I mean, you sent it to me. Two other people had sent it to me before you did, but I watched it when you sent it to me. A video that he made called "Ruining the Ruiner," in which, I only watched about 5 minutes of it, but before I had even seen that, the second person in the video with him, Joseph, I believe is his name, Powell, had already had this massive meltdown on Facebook group that I'm also on. We completely misinterpreted the things that I said, misrepresented them through slurs and insults and all sorts of things at me in this post. And so even when I tried to correct him and, set the facts straight of what he was saying about me, his response was just to block me, of course. But then that video gets made. So again, within 5 minutes, they've completely misinterpreted and misrepresented the things that I said, clearly, having these emotional temper tantrums about what they think that I'm saying, right? And, hurling insults at me and doing, the video is called Ruining the Ruiner. It kind of says enough, right? So I'd kind of commented on the video saying, guys, if you're going to talk shit about me, at least be factually correct about it. Like that's the only thing I ever ask, because only the truth really hurts, right? So if you're going to try and like insult me, at least insult something that's true about me. But anyways, I ended up reaching out to him and just saying like, hey, let's talk, because I've clearly upset you and I don't want to leave you sitting there upset, man. Like, just one-on-one had a conversation with him where we ran through everything. I answered all his questions. He clarified for me what he was upset about. We came to a mutual understanding that he was just not hearing me correctly because he was emotionally responding to a few triggers within things that I had said, missed all the rest of my explanation. But we clarified it and everything was good, and had made the decision he wanted to basically replicate the conversation on a recording in the future. So we set a date to do so. And so the first date came along, and I had something come up with my residence where my landlord was coming, or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but something had come up, had to reschedule with him. Fine. So we set a date for the rescheduling, but there was a typo in what said, like the difference between on and or. And so he was thinking it was the next Sunday, and I was thinking it was the second Sunday. So he was thinking it was a week from then. I was thinking it was 2 weeks from then. And so a week from then, when I wasn't there, he was pissed. Right. And I was like, oh, sorry, man, that was a typo, mistake. I'm good to do it next Sunday. And then the next Sunday came along, and I got called to a hospital because I have a friend who has DID and had an outburst, and I had to go attend like an emergency situation, basically. And so I got back to him as soon as I could. Again, in the messages, he was fine with me, but then I had commented something on Facebook that really had nothing to do with him, and he comes on and starts having this whole meltdown once again, hurling insults at me and misrepresenting what I said because he had misinterpreted it. And it had happened across like 3 or 4 different platforms between like direct messages, Facebook and YouTube. And I was just like, it was always the cycle of him doing that, and then me saying, no, man, that's not what happened. This is what happened. And then him coming back and apologizing, but then turning around and doing it again. Right. And from where I come from, like, a true apology comes with changed behavior. Right. So we end up, he has his blow up, doesn't want to do the video. Okay, cool. Some time goes by. He had blocked me on everything. Some time goes by. He ends up contacting me again, asking me if I'll do the video. So I'm like, okay, cool. We set a date, and then he doesn't show up for that time that was meant to happen. So, like, it's just life. It's not a big deal, but whatever. Just hilarious that's how it went. Anyways, we rescheduled, and then it happened. So, going into it, that's why I start the video with, like, I just want to establish this baseline that what you've already shown me is that, like, you're capable of completely misrepresenting me, reality, misinterpreting me and reality. And because you're emotional about that, you have these actions to get attention. Because that's the way he even worded it to me. I was just trying to get your attention. It's like, well, like, you're just trying to get attention because you've got this emotional void that you need to fill because you've misinterpreted and misrepresented reality. Right? Which is exactly what I've been saying about these people. So I just wanted to set that as a baseline. And, he couldn't do it. He couldn't own to his own words right off the top. So at that point in time, I had lost my patience. So you'll see it in the video. But like, at that point in time, like, I was just like, okay, if we can't even establish this reality that you established through your actions, that is completely objective, right? Like, there's no denying that you said what you said, and that these things happened, and that this is exactly what it has taken to get to today. Then why am I supposed to respect all of your fucking super soldier stories, right? If you can't, like, why should I trust your ability to interpret your dreams, right? Because to me, that's all I ever hear is my dreams. Like, what do you call a memory other than your dreams? Because when I ask the question, explain to me how you get this memory back, it's dreams.
That doesn't involve dreams. And then he proceeds to tell you a story about a dream.
And so I kind of talk over him, and I'm a bit of a dick, but like, a point made, like, you're wasting my time. You've been a disrespectful prick, to use your own words, leading up to this for like 2-3 months across multiple platforms, completely like trying to insult me every chance you get, and then apologizing for it, and then doing it again. And you want my respect while you're having a conversation with me about your dreams and, everything else. But yeah, I feel like I treat you appropriately.
Yeah. And this entire video is very telling because you guys get into a bunch of different things. Now, before we play the video and provide our commentary, this is a transformative work. We are educating the public by commenting and critiquing the video provided. We are not here to make fun of anyone's experiences or attack anyone, just to provide commentary on this conversation between Arkham Ra and Shane the Ruiner, and under copyright section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Any false copyright claims will be overturned, which I don't think that we have to really worry about because we have the person that was a part of the video here with us. So, Shane, do we have your permission to share this video and provide commentary and criticism?
Well, in plain human language, I asked him ahead of time if I could co-record the conversation so that I could post it as well. So I had his blessing to do that. This is how I'm doing that. And he has already posted it. So that tells me that it's fair to go. We've had a back and forth since there where he did the same thing he always does and has blocked me once again. So yeah, here's my response. Fun. Yeah, we're good to go.
All right, perfect.
Myself.
All right, this is Fractal Weapons. I'm your host, Arkeem Ra. Today we are talking with Shane Bales, aka the Ruiner. Shane is a self-proclaimed former Illuminati member who has seen what people refer to as the programs, whatever you want to call them, from multiple angles, doing his work. He had a blog, the Ruiner blog, well, it's still up. You can still go on it and check it out, where he talked about a lot of different things. Probably the first time that anybody talked about him was there on that blog. And that's kind of how we got known from the community, for those of you who aren't familiar with his work. And he did a show with Penny Bradley and also Ryder Lee recently, which caused maybe what you could call controversy. I don't know a better word for it within the secret space program community, because based
controversy, yes, it caused a lot of controversy, Shane.
well, there's just been a lot going on, and but basically, your perspective is that it's kind of tomfoolery, and there's a deeper underlying operation going on underneath it all, and that's kind of like something that people are seeing to not actually fully see the picture. Would that be an accurate representation of you and your work?
Definitely close. I mean, yeah, I guess just to like establish some baselines off the top, like I am an unintended whistleblower. I didn't write the blog so that the whole community would take it and do what they did with it. I've kind of had a on and off relationship with the community because of that, because I don't consider myself a whistleblower. I'm not a person who thinks that everyone needs to hear my message or any of my information, any of that kind of thing. And, you know, I'm not here to try and change your mind or anyone else's mind on anything.
Which is really interesting, Shane, because everybody else in the community, especially the super soldiers and the SSP asset people, are always constantly trying to change people's minds about what's going on in reality.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've gone through this relationship on my own with the community where, you know, when I came out, I saw what it did. And to be honest, you know, I wrote a whole blog about it, you know, it was consuming my life. You know, I'd wake up every morning and there'd be like 60 fucking emails to read. And I wasn't paying enough attention to my job, like my real job. I wasn't paying enough attention to my girlfriend. I wasn't paying enough attention to life because I was like, completely engulfed in this echo community of all these people trying to tell me their stories, right? And trying to get validation for various things and tell me how they saw me in dreams and all these different things. And it was too much. So I took like a good 2 years off and reconfigured all of that just to get back to a place where, you know, I didn't have that, what would you say, hype, I guess, behind it anymore. And
now, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Did you put something in that blog that let people know that it was basically fiction? Was that something that, or were they just taking it as real, or what was going on there?
Well, yes, yeah, so in the first blog, like it says, like, you know, this is a fictionalized story, right? Which is something that obviously we've heard more recently, but I said it in that, it says it right on it. And I actually do on my Patreon a series where I separate the fiction, right? Like, because what had happened is once a bunch of eyes were on it, I couldn't tell the story that I originally set out to tell. And what I wanted to do, I had to do, but I had to be able to use the terminology that existed within this community in order to do it. Right. And so even I was playing a character and I was honest about that. Like, even if you go back to my first interviews, like I would say it, that the Ruiner is a character that I play. Right. It's not really Shane. And then after that 2 years, that's when I came back. And I've explained this over and over and over again for people to hear. It's all over my own channel. It's, and on other people's interviews. Like, this isn't new. It's been a long time. Right. So yeah, it's just, there's the answer. Because the blog was discovered and I do these talks, people want to ask me questions. And I have a policy when I get asked questions that if you ask me the question, I will be honest with you. Just is what it is. I don't do that to hurt your feelings or discredit you or anything else that you do. It's just, my view on it. My view on these things is definitely very different than most people. Big part of it is that, like, it's not recovered memory for me. Right? Like, it's just as much as I remember having to reschedule this conversation with you last Sunday, I remember everything I've done. I could go through every scar on this body, and there are many. I could point to all of them and tell you exactly how and when I got them. And I've been in those simulations and I've been through all of those things, and it's conscious. It's not something I learned about listening to people on the internet. It's not something I recovered in a psychedelic experience or meditation experience or through any type of other means. I've never been disconnected from that. It's just daily life for me. So when I'm in this community and I hear people speak, I hear a lot of that, where it's like, oh, I recovered my memories when I was like, in my 20s or my 30s or my 40s or my 50s or whatever that is. And I can't compute that, because for me, I remember everything. When it was time for me to go to outer space in a simulation, I knew I was going to outer space in a simulation, and I came back right to this very chair that I sat in when it started. Right. So that's kind of where I come from for all of this. And then the other part of the baseline is just, leading up to this, you've had a dramatic tendency to misinterpret and misrepresent the things that I say based on your emotional reactions, and then take an action in order to get attention. Would that be unfair to say?
Sure. I mean, I don't know if I'm like trying to get attention other than maybe your attention. I wanted to talk to you. But I do want this conversation to be had in a sober, logical manner. And again, as I said, off the record, I'm sorry if I was reacted to things emotionally, if I or anything like that, because this does affect me deeply in my life. There's a lot of trauma attached to it, and there were some certain things that you said that really triggered me. Like, and I'll just be blatantly honest. I'm not trying to like bring up bad blood again, but the whole comment where, you look at these guys and they don't look like they could fight anyone and they're normal people, et cetera, et cetera. That's kind of the point, is we are normal people, as we are. And, we're not going to all be buffed out, 6'5", Hulk. I don't know. That's not how this all works.
No,
There's
physical skills transferable, man. Physical skill is transferable. There's no way that they put you into an altar and make you work out and you're still not worked out in your regular form. That's not possible. So no, I am going to forever call bullshit on that kind of nonsense. If you do not physically represent today what you seem to think you are capable of, then you probably weren't capable of those things, because you would still, right?
In my opinion.
You have any comment on that?
Well, I mean, I stand by what I said. Like, it's muscle memory and a personality are totally different parts of your brain, and your motor function skills and all of those things are different. Like, if you were talking about a language than something linguistic, then yeah, I could buy that. But when you're talking about, your ability to lift, weight, when your ability to, maybe not even know what to do in a fight, but your muscle memory would still be there, and your reactions as it happens with us. And this is how martial arts are trained, right? Is through repetition in order to make it like your instinct to do it, right? It's a reaction. You've programmed that reaction. If you program that reaction, then your body has that reaction, right? And all of those things are just kind of missing. It's like similar to the TV show Sense8, where it was like, they were showing that in a more kind of mystical way, but just imagine that those were different alters. And, it's the front person is capable of like throwing the kicks that the other alter knows how to throw, right?
Yep.
And, it's, yeah, that's that.
Yeah, to me, it's proof that that stuff didn't happen in this reality, right? Because it's exactly like what you just said. If you really were a super soldier and you were this hawked out person, you should be able to do that now. Why can't you do that now if you really were that person? So it's only one logical conclusion to come to there, is that it didn't really happen.
Some semblance of it would even convince me, right? It's kind of like that other guy, I never remember his name, Ishmael something.
Ishmael
Like
Perez.
at least he does look the part. You know what I mean? Like, I could at least give him that much. But yeah.
That's what Stephen Cambion from Truth Seeker said. He offered Randy Kramer $10,000 to fight him in a boxing ring, in a boxing match. He was like, yeah, if you want to prove to me you're a super soldier, then put your money where your mouth is and let's go box. And of course, Randy Kramer didn't respond. But I mean, hey, like, it's the truth. Like, if these people really are super soldiers, they should be able to fight, right?
Well, yeah, maybe not even consciously know that they could, but this would be similar to like, maybe it's a little bit different, but like in that movie American Ultra, he had an activation process that they put him through, and then when he was attacked, he knew to fight. But that's not to say that if he was just attacked, he wouldn't know somewhat what to do, right? Like, I haven't trained martial arts in years, but if someone throws a punch, there's like a reaction that's still there because I trained it for so many years before that, right? Like, it's like you can't it's that expression of like, it's like riding a bike. A certain amount of it is like, you lose a massive percentage of it, of course, but at the same time, just like the physical representation of something like that, again, it'd be different if you told me that you were taking this all happened to you when you were in your 20s and you're now in your 60s, but like one person that I have always kind of believed was probably definitely involved with something like a super soldier program was Duncan O'Finian, and that dude could probably still kick my ass, and he's like I don't know, like 30 years older than me. So like, I don't there needs to be some type of proof in the result here, and even with like the character, right? Like, I'm not even saying that I have the character to play with the type of toys that these people say that they're supposed to, but I'm a lot closer to it than a lot of they are, right? Like a lot of those people are, and I'm not. But like, I definitely, like, I wouldn't want to give this kid a gun, let alone like a space fleet to operate, right? So I don't know.
And on that is
There's a
that
difference between alternate consciousness and muscle memory, right?
Yeah, these are alters are compartmentalized. They're put underneath the surface so that you can't access them. And our consciousness is people can access our consciousness, but we are physical. We can't have somebody walking around on the streets, a normal civilian, with these abilities. And that's part of the reason, in my opinion. I'm not trying to state this as fact. I want people to form their own opinion on this, but in my opinion, that's the reason why people are in these programs. It's not necessarily just to throw you out in space and make and use you for free slave labor in military operations. It's also because if there are people who are powerful star seeds, for lack of a better term, that have latent abilities, in my opinion, that's a reason why they have to break us when we're born, is because...
Really quickly, Shane, what do you think about the term star seeds?
Well, just that, like, why is everyone like, so I don't even know where to start with this, but like basically the way that it works in this particular community is it's just a way to say that we're special, right? It's like, I am better, special, more unique, more powerful than, and too dangerous for them, right? And again, trying to make themselves seem unique. And like, kind of what I've been saying about like the MK Ultra programs is like, it could happen to just about anybody, right? Like, it wouldn't necessarily mean that they thought you were some type of super special amazing soul from some other dimension. Like that's not what's going on there. It's just you have the potential to do something, and they want to exploit that in some way, right? And in a way, like we do agree on what his like conclusion of what it's about, which is essentially about making sure that people aren't exhibiting, psychic, telekinetic, telepathic abilities in the general public on a regular basis for everyone to see, therefore know it was possible, and therefore learn how to do on their own, right? Like I do agree with that much. But once again, I mean, we've gone through it a few times, and I'll just keep saying it, like that idea of like making it all about aliens is there for a reason, right? It's to make it so that it's not about humans doing these things to humans at the end of the day.
Otherwise, you have this being walking around that has abilities that's too powerful. Also, I would argue I'm not saying it's fact, but I think that there could be quite a few people who came here with a mission, something that they needed to do, and they made sure, the powers that be made sure that you don't remember that, and that you just kind of live your life without knowing your mission anymore, forgetting it. I'm not stating these things as fact. I think people should form their own opinion, but that's kind of the conclusions that I've come to, and looking into this stuff. But again, I think that you have like you said, a unique perspective, because you haven't ever experienced what it's like to, get kidnapped, to not be fully aware of what even happened to you, and then wonder why you have these memories. And it's going to give you a different perspective on things than somebody who has to go through screen memories to even figure out like what actually happened. And that's one thing that I kind of wanted to touch base on with you, is like, look, people, there's a lot of disagreement and a lot of bullshit in this community, and a lot of people don't get along, but there are some things we can agree on. And what we can agree on is that there is manipulation of the masses on a mass level. And that's why I think that we can talk and maybe try to get to the bottom of it together. Maybe not agree on everything, but I think that this is all mind control. And that's where, whether or not we agree on the outcome, what they're doing with the mind control, what's real, what isn't, I think we can agree that it's happening. And I have followed your work. I've done some research. Obviously, haven't watched every video or read everything, but I do find a lot of your perspective on the programs, what's going on, interesting. And I think that there are people that maybe are just shutting you down and not listening to you when they should maybe try to at least open their ears to listen to what you have to say. And that's another reason why I wanted to bring you on the show. Yeah, sorry if that was a little rant there.
No, all good. You're right in that we agree more than we disagree, right? Is that obviously they are doing this to people, and it is a different perspective for me being consciously aware of it, right?
Wait, he just said that all of this is MK Ultra, right? Did he not just say that?
Well, he said that we can agree that it's all mind control. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting the way the rest of this interview plays out then.
Well, yeah, like I'm almost forgetting that he said all of this because of the West. Yeah, and especially the way that it ended, but anyways.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment on that really quick, that he basically said that a lot of this or all of this is MK Ultra.
Was taking places and brought places when I was young enough to not really understand what was going on, but like to have to be kidnapped from my home and taken places wasn't necessary because I went willingly, right? So
and that has to do with being an Illuminati bloodline.
Part of it,
right?
Basically what it all boils down to, and where we could probably kind of agree, is that human beings, and it's got nothing to do with star seeds or any of that type of nonsense that is also part of the program. But also, human beings are capable of a lot more than we're allowed to do. Let's put it that way. Our magic, if you will, our psychic abilities, our telepathic abilities, our telekinetic abilities, all of those abilities that we have, we should all have. Not you because you're special, or me because I'm Illuminati bloodline, or that person because they're whatever person incarnated from whatever fucking planet. All of us. And some of us exhibit more of that when we're children. than others. And that's why they have a lot of programs in school, a lot of different aptitude screening programs, testing programs, in order to identify those type of children who are demonstrating those type of what they call hypersensory perception abilities, right? And then, yes, from there, they would take that person, usually not by force, right? Usually, and I think we might have talked about this, allergy shots was a cover as an example, right? They would convince the parent that this child needed to go monthly allergy shots. And so they would bring their child to this doctor's office. The doctor would take them into a little back room. Tomfoolery would go on, and then they would come out of their appointment, go home like nothing ever happened, right? That's a little bit even different than kidnapping. This idea that they're somehow sneaking into people's houses and taking them in their underwear and returning them back without anyone noticing is absurd, and it just is. But
I disagree with that, but
I want to make a comment on that because I think that that is really absurd. And how do these SSP people and these super soldiers think that they are just kidnapped for long periods of time without their family or their friends or their teachers or their school ever noticing that they're gone? Right? It makes absolutely no sense.
well, that's the other part of it too. Like I've had conversations with a couple, savvy friends that I went to. I went to a lot of different public schools, but that I had like gone to school with, and they would notice. Like, as an example, there was this story that I had mono for something like 6 months in like the 10th grade, but I was not at home for, where would a kid with mono be? Right. Right. So it's like that's the kind of stuff, like my story doesn't include or require any fantastical explanations of like where I was and why I was there, right? And all of these ones do, especially with like the thing about all of these stories is like these people are not talking about this in past tense either, right? Like they're still doing these missions at night. Like between when I had this talk with him and now, he's probably gone on a few of these missions, right? So that's the other part of it that they're not kind of copying to when they're just talking about their memories either, is it's not just memories. You guys are still playing this out as if it's happening right now to you, right? So
Yeah, it's incredible how the whole kidnapping thing for long periods of time has been perpetuated and created, right? I really don't understand that whatsoever, and it makes way more sense in the way that you're explaining it with him. That it's not like that at all. It's more of of not so much, maybe not so much a volunteering for everybody, but a secretive thing that's only happening for a certain period of time. Like you're just not going to go away for 6, 7, 10 months without any kind of explanation from anybody, right? I know that there's been some people that have equated like this is another thing that's been perpetuated in the community, is like summer camps or MK Ultra summer camps, where they'll be looking back on their childhood and realize that they went to a sleepaway camp, summer camp for 3 months or whatever, and then they look back on it and think that it was like this giant, huge MK Ultra program. Do they do anything like that? Is that real or is that not real?
that's absolutely real, and that's also a good example, but it's an example that goes both ways, and that'll come up in this conversation. All of this stuff goes both ways, where there is some truth to it, but then because there's some truth to it, it's like anyone can self-diagnose it, right? Like ascribe it to their story or add it to their story. Sorry. And yeah, like it's not every summer camp, right? It's not just like you went to summer camp and therefore that's must have been what happened isn't even a logical leap, right? It's it'd be more detailed than that. And like I do understand that for a lot of people it wasn't something that was ongoing either, right? It would be like they would bring in an individual, maybe test them once, and then that would be it, right? So for those people, of course, it's probably a very fucking strange memory that would be easy to write into it. And that's fine, right? And like there's a lot of people out there like that, and they just kind of like live with that question, right? Like maybe it was something, maybe it wasn't, but it's this taking it to this next level of LARPing it, right? Where you're actually like playing it out like I am this other being starseed who is being used for all these different things on a nightly basis or whatever it is for them. That's where, like, again, there's a line, and everyone, you take too many leaps past that line, right? And you take something, and anyone can do that, right? You can take any factual data point on anything and push it too far and make up a story.
Absolutely, I agree.
We're here.
Well, again, there's, if you can't establish a baseline of reality, I have to revert to your baseline of reality, which is that you are unable to interpret and represent reality correctly based on your emotional responses. And if you believe these things happen to you, or you have trauma for any reason, then your emotional responses are going to lead you to those conclusions. Right? And therefore I can't really hear you when you say that because of the character you've shown me. But anyways, back to
the end of the interview.
when they take them or do these things,
What was that?
like, honestly, that should be the end of the interview, right? It's like right from there, like, dude, like, I am telling you that I can't hear what you're saying to me because you've already shown me that I shouldn't listen to it, right? Like, and yeah, that should have been the end of the interview.
Yeah, probably could have ended it right there and not went any further, because it's very spot on. And here later on in the interview, you get into, actual trauma and how these space stories and these time travel stories is a cover for real life trauma that they possibly could have went through. And they're not wanting to look at that aspect of it and not have it happen to them on Earth. They want it to be this exaggerated fairy tale 20 and back fighting aliens in space, age regression, advanced technology story. And that is a very good point.
To them, they're basically studying them, testing their abilities. And in order to do that, they will use MK Ultra so that they can call in the altar, test them through that altar, bring them back into their front state, send them home, so that that front state doesn't tell mom and dad, doesn't tell the teachers at school, doesn't tell all of those people. It has nothing to do with, in that ability, that in that version, they have abilities that they don't have in the other one. That is demonstrably false, right? There's MPD studies going way back that prove that that is not true. You can be compartmentalized from it, but to be completely disconnected from an ability is not possible. So that's where we agree, is that they have been doing that for a long time. MK Ultra is a very real thing. It's a well-documented thing. And there's also like a sub or an undocumented deeper level of it as well. And it all had to do with studying kids that were showing these abilities, studying humans, doing one of two things with them, either just exploiting that ability and then sending them home and trying to make them forget that they know how to do it, right? Which we tend to do to ourselves anyways, or employing them to work with them. But once again, like, these people can't go to outer space. Like, there is no outer space for you guys to be fighting your space battles in, period. So, that's.
Can you go like a little?
What happened? Oh.
But I don't want to segue too far, but can you go a little bit into that? There is no outer space, and your perception of like.
Everything's holographic, so you're not actually like traveling. It's similar to what they show you in, like, say, Star Trek. You'd have to be broken down into code and then transferred to another planet and then deciphered on the other end. You wouldn't be able to just hop on a spaceship, go out there and start shooting things in space like Star Wars shows you. It's they show you that.
So Star Trek isn't ridiculous and totally makes sense, but Star Wars is ridiculous.
No, I used an aspect of both to make an example. Right. So
personally, I think it's a little more.
God.
Misrepresented, misinterpreted, and then misrepresented because he had an emotional reaction to what I just said. Right. And that's it. Like, I know that's a trivial example of it, but that's it. Right. Is whatever has happened to these people in their life, whether that is actually MK Ultra or it's just good old fashioned trauma. I'm not trying to be a dick, but like just good old fashioned trauma. They've compartmentalized it into these stories because this is their tendency to do. right? Because it's easier than actually hearing or actually seeing or actually representing what the reality is. They will twist it into something else. And that's what's going on, just like in this situation, right? Like, very trivial example of it, all the way up to something happened to me when I was a kid. I fought space aliens, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. And you've mentioned that even on my show, and I think on several shows, that space doesn't work the way that we've been portrayed that space does.
And I don't
Uh,
have the vocabulary to explain it properly. I just don't. I'm not a fucking physicist. I can't do it. I'm sorry. I would love to. I kind of get it. Like, the analogies I try to use it in that way, I kind of get it. I can't explain it properly. I'm sorry, but I do know what I do know, and that's it. I'm not going to, until someone can show me otherwise. I'm going to continue to believe that.
Now, just playing devil's advocate here, who was it that told you that space works that way? Was that something you developed on your own and figured out on your own, or was that from somebody else that would know more about it, that explained that you can't really travel in space? In order to get someplace else in space to a different planet, you would basically have to dematerialize yourself and then rematerialize on that other planet.
I've heard it on both ends. You know what I mean? Like, I've talked to people who believe that we shoot rockets and we've been to the moon and believe that space is what it is, and people who believe that we even have an advanced level of that type of technology that could probably take us further too, all the way to the other end as well. It's just based on what I've seen, coupled with everything that I've heard, that's my conclusion. Is yeah, that's not how it works. And I'm sorry, I can't really explain it any better than that. But until someone actually shows me people fighting battles in space, I'm still just not going to believe it. I mean, that's a whole other topic of NASA foolery and everything else going on there, right? So,
well, I mean, they lied to us about everything else, Shane, but they're telling us the truth about space. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I don't necessarily agree or endorse that we can't travel in space, because I don't 100% know for a fact that we can't travel in space, but it would make sense that they would continue covering it up if we actually can't, and they would make it something different than what it is.
Ridiculous to say that it's holographic and that we're phasing into other planets than to say I can see Mars, it's out there, and if I were to have a craft with the right propulsion systems, I could get there. And it doesn't necessarily have to be something that you throw a bunch of gasoline in the back of that explodes, and you have to fit enough gas in it to get to the planet. So hopefully, gas is cheap when they decide to do this, right? I think that's a little bit ridiculous to look at things that way. And I think it's also ridiculous to act like our government itself doesn't have craft that are capable of going to the moon and back and what have you, and things like that.
Do objective reality at all? Like, I mean, they could barely shoot down a fucking weather balloon, dude. Come on now. There is a war going on our planet right now, which negates everything you guys say. Everything.
How does that negate that?
Because of the level of technology and the uses of that technology is all negated by what is happening on this planet right now. Out of one side of your guys' face, you'll say they're depopulating. On the other side, they're trafficking you as slaves in space. Those two are a paradox if you try to put them together, right? If they're fucking going to outer space and going to all these planets, why are all those people dying on this planet? Why aren't they using any of that technology? Why are they using the technology that is available, as opposed to this technology that you guys allege is available? Right?
Because the technology is suppressed.
No outcome to your story. Whereas what I'm saying about it being holographic, there is science all over the fucking world to show you that. There are examples of that all over this fucking planet that show you that.
And we've shown some on my show with the holographic technology, with them doing a simulation of the planet Mars on a Hawaiian island, the technology of the simulation, being able to actually touch the simulation. Also, recently I showed that photo booth technology where you can go inside a photo booth and then you can be anywhere else on the planet, anywhere in any other country or anything. So yeah, they do have this kind of technology that you're very well speaking about here.
That there are examples of that all over this fucking planet that show you that. Show me anything on your end, anything at all. I've been waiting for years.
There's patents you can find on the internet for.
Show me the result of those patents.
I don't have
I could write
millions
a
of
patent
dollars
right now
for
and put it
those.
on the internet. Doesn't make it real.
You got a good point, but I think that there's plenty of people who have seen.
Well, I mean, there is patents for anti-gravity craft. There's patents for the TR-3B that you can find online that the military is using now. We don't have evidence that they're using that technology to travel off the planet. I think for anything, it would be used for Space Force within the planet.
Well, that's the thing is like the patents that came out that supported the secret space program, that was a while ago, and now we know what those patents are actually for, right? Which is kind of like the part of this conversation that always happens where like even that statement to say like there's patents, yeah, and all those patents have turned out to be for something other than what you guys have claimed they were for the last 20 years now, right? Like it was all evidence of UFOs, it was all evidence of all this reverse engineering, and now it's evidence of the stuff that we're using it for, right? So proof is in the result at this point of what it was. The same thing with the solar warden thing, right? It ended up just being Space Force at the end of the day. But at the time, and if you didn't know, and definitely at the time that came out, because there was no internet for people to really discuss it, and for anyone from the military to come in and say, well, non-terrestrial is a term that we use when we're talking about water often, right? And there's nobody to speak that reason to that echo chamber, kind of like this situation. It's if you don't understand that what you're saying is not true, you're just going to keep parroting it and keep using it as some type of logic to support what you believe, but it's a failure in logic, so you have to correct it if you're going to continue. And that's the same thing with this patent argument. It's like, yes, we had some anomalous seeming patents at one time that eventually got an explanation, right? And that explanation is reasonable and it's applicable and it's right here in front of our faces. There's no longer a reason to believe maybe they're hiding something, right? They showed us what they were hiding.
Exactly. And then also like Project Looking Glass too, the secret space program and the super soldiers have taken a real program, which was an Air Force program, which was called Operation Looking Glass, and turned that into this future seeing device and a past seeing device and all that, when it's really a military operation command post in space to arm space with nuclear with the nuclear capabilities to launch missiles from Earth. Right? They've taken a lot of real programs and manipulated it and turned it into something that it's not. I've shown that several times on here. The Operation Looking Glass is not what they say that it is.
And what do we know the military loves to do, which is give us bullshit to believe while they're doing something else, right? So in all of these occurrences, that's exactly it. As you can see, like, if they don't actually want to tell us the truth about what they're doing in space yet, then it's perfectly fine for us to believe that they have some type of secret space fleet out there, right? Because they know they don't. And therefore, no one's ever going to find any evidence of that. If they were to come along and correct it and be like, well, it's not that, it's just this other thing, then people are going to start looking for that other thing and eventually find it, right? And so if you're hiding something and the people that you're hiding it from are pointing their finger at something that is not it, you're going to cheer that on 100%, right? And what do we have in mass media? A cheering on of this whole propaganda program
that serves as a cover up for the real thing.
These craft who have been on these craft, and sure, Shane, you might be able to say to people that have not experienced these things that it's not real, but I've experienced things that I can't write off and I can't explain. Like, for
I
instance,
can't buy your
I just want,
experience because you have proven that you cannot interpret and represent reality correctly based on your emotional responses, and that you are willing to do things to get attention based on that. So how can I take what you say seriously? You've got this testimony that is basically thrown out by your character.
I disagree with that. What?
You admitted to it. Didn't you just apologize to me for it?
Yes, I apologize to you for being combative with you, for being
For
upset with
misrepresenting
you.
me and misinterpreting reality.
That's
Based
not
on
what I
emotional
apologize
reaction
for.
and
I
taking
don't agree
action.
with you.
We just saw him live misinterpret reality, like what, 4 or 5 minutes ago, in the exact conversation.
On reality, and that's part of the reason why we're here. Okay? And that's why we're talking. You don't have to be upset about it.
You can't interpret reality, even when it's in text form in front of you. So why should I accept your interpretation of your dream states or your LSD trips?
That's
Explain that to me.
that's I don't expect you to just accept what I say at face value. And I know that you especially aren't going to accept what I say at face value. But what I do want you to take into consideration is this isn't all just people having dreams and on LSD trips. There are shared memories. We aren't just there's instances where we can finish each other's sentences, where people will intentionally not give information away to see if the other person will remember the same thing than they do. And when you experience this, it's very hard to write it off as all just somebody being delusional. And that's why I wanted to ask you and talk to you about, you talk a little bit about how, people talk about screen memories, people talk about implanted memories.
Really quick, let's comment on this really quick. What is the situation with a lot of these people apparently remembering the exact same thing? How do we explain that? I mean, I already know the answer, but for the audience, of course.
Personally, I think a lot of it has to do with something, again, I couldn't prove, but like a broadcast frequency that we're all kind of picking up on, like a mass mind control broadcast type of frequency. Once they figured out how to make things rattle around in our skull, aka the voice to skull technology that we all talk about in these communities, they figured out that they can influence how we feel. And there are declassified examples of them doing this with radio waves. There's in small areas, right, like influencing the way a town feels, as an example, towards a certain subject using radio waves, or what they think, or to cause mass hallucinations. They've even done things like dose entire towns with LSD to do similar types of experiments, right? So none of this stuff is new. I believe that they've perfected it to the point where they can broadcast it across broadband frequencies, and that we all kind of pick up on it. And depending on your proclivities, I guess, or your maybe, oh man, I almost said mental illnesses, but like kind of where you're aligned, that will interpret in different ways, right? And for some people, I think we see it a variety of ways that we all do agree on, like say left versus right these days, or like certain sides of certain injections, right? And that same dynamic just gets kind of processed for each individual, right? Like if your topic is Tupperware, then it's all about Tupperware. But if your topic is the secret space program, then you're going to interpret it all as a secret space program, and that's going to be kind of your drive. They've probably got multiple versions of that frequency running to do this for various reasons, and I think they've probably figured out our community long ago and given us one, right? Like that's what I to speak from my own experience that can't be verified, that's what I knew was going on with like that Corey story. And I gave several examples in that blog of other people saying the same things in their own version, because they were picking up this frequency that was making them think about these fucking big blue birds that they were associating with ancient Egypt and the symbol of Ra, right? And it came up in a bunch of different people within culture all over the world, not just Corey, right? So that's kind of what I do think is going on. And I do think that they've used like old-fashioned propaganda to kind of set the stage for all of this alien stuff. And I think that right now we're actually probably in the middle of kind of seeing however they intend to use it in the end, right? Because I mean, as a whole other topic, like this is a kind of a mainstream topic these days, is UFOs and things like that, right? So yeah.
Yeah. If anyone's interested, check out my interview with Alana Freeland. We dive deep into these frequency weapons, and she's written several books on it. And we talk about this very thing. So if people want more information, check out that interview that I did with her.
I would argue that going into a VR, experiencing something that isn't real and then thinking it is real would be the definition of an implanted memory. And that's why I think that's somewhere we can meet, and somewhere where I'm obviously I don't agree with you, but I don't want to be a fool. I don't want to believe in something that's not real. So if I'm being lied to, if I've never been in space, if there's something deeper going on here, I don't want to just throw the baby out with the bathwater and not listen to you. So that's why I wanted to talk to you about screen memories. I mean, do you think that these people in the community that are having memories that, I know a lot of you are saying we're just writing it as we go along, and sure, if you believe that, but do you think it's possible that we're getting the same screen memories implanted so that we all give the same story, which is apparently bullshit according to you, because obviously they don't want the real thing to come to light, right? I mean, that is basically what you're saying, right?
Well, if they've always got the scapegoat of it's aliens and something beyond your grasp, then of course they'll never have to suffer any consequences to what they're doing to hundreds of thousands of children all over the world, right? Makes sense. But yes, the difference between screen memory and implanted memory is simply dates and technology, right? If you've seen Clockwork Orange, that's a screen memory, right? Like that type of mind control. That's a screen memory, whereas an implanted memory would be a little bit probably, it's really just a terminology difference. They're the same thing. It's basically you've had your memory altered so that you believe something has happened that has not. And if you remember, like another one of the back and forths that had gone on there, the false memory syndrome, right? That all is based on the same science, which is that every time we—
I don't think false memory syndrome is real. It's not.
We got to comment on this because this was actually a post that I made on Facebook about false memory syndrome, and got a lot of people in an uproar. And because they think that it was something that was made up to cover up abuse of children. And they're denying it. Oh, it's not real because it's from the satanic panic and all that. They're trying to cover up real abuse from children and all that. Well, false memory syndrome is very real. It's a very real thing, and it's exactly like what you just said. It's the same as screen memories or implanted memories. It's just a different title. And I might have screwed up on that post by including the sexual nature involving it, but I had Robert Faloco on my channel, and he's a psychotherapist, and he confirmed, and he's dealt with cases with people that have had false memory syndrome. So it's a real thing. So you can try and deny it all you want, but it's real.
Yeah, it's why eyewitness testimony is also not, as heavily favored as people seem to think it is, right? Like, go get a security job for a month and you'll figure out how falsely people remember things, especially in a high stress situation. Because what the stress does is it narrows your focus so that you can deal with the stressful factor. It's deliberately filtering out all of that shit you're so sure you remember, right? So it's and that's like memory suppression, all of these different things that we know about that is commonly accepted in a bunch of different ways. These people will use to validate their arguments in a bunch of different ways, right? That our mind does to play tricks on us, such as, if I really, really, really could not conceptually believe that Ryder walked up and punched me in the face. I might believe that some other dude walked up and punched me in the face if Ryder walked up and punched me in the face, right? That can happen. My brain is capable of doing that, and that's what that is. And yes, I mean, there are always cases where people who were abused had that used against them, and their perpetrators got away with shit they shouldn't have got away with. Of course, that happens with every law, that happens with every science, that happens with every fact, right? But that doesn't throw it out, and that doesn't mean that it's not real. I think I used the example of the Me Too movement. Do we believe that every single person told 100% of the truth during that time? No, we don't. We've figured it out by now that that was definitely not true, that people saw a movement, jumped onto it because that's what people do, right? And yeah, it's just, I think the crux of all of this is just all of these people who just don't want to be humans. So I guess being a starseed and in part of the secret space program is better for them.
It's not accepted. It's not accepted by the psych. It is not clinically accepted. It's not real. False memory syndrome is not real. It's not.
Once again,
you can look it up right now and you can see that it is not accepted. It has not been accepted by the psychological community at all. I don't give a fuck what you say. False memory syndrome is not real.
But false memory syndrome is exactly the same as screened memories and implanted memories. How is he saying that false memory syndrome isn't real, but screened memories and implanted memories are real? They're the exact same thing.
And to say that it's not accepted would be some type of an attempt, a false attempt at an appeal to authority. Whereas what I'm about to say about the fact that I have a degree in this is not, just for the record. In this, I'm going to have to disagree with the person who can't interpret and represent reality properly because they're emotional. Anyways, yes, it is real.
You don't need you don't need to be such a dick,
how our memory works.
You don't need. I've been nothing.
We bring that image back into this construct of our hippocampus.
Who's the one who's being emotional? Look at you, Shane. You're literally self-projecting yourself.
I'm laughing at you because this is
I'm not laughing at you. I'm trying to have a serious conversation with you. I haven't been disrespectful to you at all, but here you are being completely disrespectful like you always are, being a complete fucking ass.
Who was just yelling though? He was just yelling. He just told you that it wasn't real. I don't think you raised your voice.
I might have to talk over him is what he was, I think is what he's perceiving as me yelling or being emotional. And the fact that I'm laughing is an emotion for sure, but
I'm trying to give you a platform.
I'm just right. And you have a problem with that. When we remember something, we're bringing that back into a part of our brain that is called the hippocampus. While it is in the hippocampus, it is prone to rewrite. And that is exactly how suggested memory works. That is exactly how a screen or implanted memory would work. That is exactly how MK Ultra worked. That is exactly how fucking psychological manipulation works. That's how advertising works. That's how subliminal messaging works. Would you like some more explanations? Which one of us is being emotional? You will not look at reality because it doesn't fit your wants to believe.
I don't want to believe that I'm a part of this shit, dude. It sucks.
That is a very good point. It seems like they throw everything out that doesn't fit with their carefully orchestrated narrative. And them, I'm saying the secret space program and the super soldier assets, right? They just want to disregard everything that doesn't fit into their bubble, into their little echo chamber, because once one domino falls, the rest of them inevitably fall too, and then they have to entirely question their entire reality and their whole story, right? And that's what I feel Archeum Ra does not want to do. He doesn't want to have to go through there and deconstruct all these previously established beliefs from his dreams and hearing other people talk about the secret space program and the super soldiers.
Like nobody wants
videos. Close your channel.
I'm trying to get help.
Put your money where your mouth is. Close your channel. Stay away from.
Why would I do that? Why would I do that? Because I want to help people and I want help myself.
You want attention.
That's not true.
Then close your channel for 6 months and then come back and help people. I've done,
That's ridiculous. You're being ridiculous. Close my channel for 6 months.
yeah, prove to me that it's not just a need for attention and that you are capable of actually representing and interpreting reality correctly.
I'm not going to do that. I think that you're just posturing.
Just for the record, I have done that multiple times myself, right? Because I don't do this for attention. For various reasons, I have stopped doing it for longer than 6 months, like 2 different periods of 6 years, and those aren't even the only or 2 years, sorry, each. That and that's not even the only time I've done it. And that's the difference. Is like I don't like this isn't my identity. This isn't about helping people it's about having an echo chamber and creating an echo chamber so that you can LARP these stories instead of actually dealing with whatever is actually wrong. Right? And if that's not true, shut your fucking YouTube channel down for 6 months and go do some work. Go see a therapist. Get some help. Or continue the circle jerk on the internet. Your choice.
Right now, and you're being ridiculous. Like, come on. Like,
I'm trying to establish a baseline.
I'm trying to heal from what happened to me. Whatever happened to me, something fucking happened, okay? And it's very traumatic. And I'm trying to heal from it. And the reason why we're here talking and why I talk to Joseph Paul, why I talk to any of the people you say are full of shit, is because I am trying to figure out what the fuck happened to me and what's real.
But you've just explained to him exactly what happened to him. Isn't that all that he would need to know? You just explained less than 20 minutes ago that it was a holographic simulation that he went through. How's he not computing what you just said less than 20 minutes ago?
Well, how many times do I have to repeat it to him would be more of a question, right? Because that's what he was butthurt about in the first place, was hearing me say that, right? Like that's what the entire temper tantrum started because I was saying that. So like, you just basically want me to repeat it to you over and over and over again so you can tell me how much of an asshole I am for having answered you honestly. Like I don't really know what he wants from me at this point, right? This is my opinion, and until this world shows me any different, I'm going to continue to have it because that's what I believe we should all do, right? Is kind of discern our reality based on what we have available to us, and that's what I'm doing. And this is my conclusion. Ryder asked me for my opinion. I gave it to him, and this gentleman and all of the people that he just mentioned, which, I'd like to point out that that's why I talk to all of the same people in my echo chamber instead of, being able to have a conversation with someone like me who actually disagrees with him, right? It's like what they will say is, I'm not going to go on that person's show because they're going to pull me apart. Well, if you believe your story, how does it get pulled apart? Right?
You lack all kinds of conviction. I mean, Chris Matthew tried to set up a SSP super soldier roundtable, right? And guess what happened there? He reached out to Penny Bradley. He reached out to Tony Rodriguez, and they both denied to come on. I'm pretty sure he reached out to Randy Kramer as well, and he didn't respond. Like, if you actually believe your story and you can support your story, why don't you want to be challenged?
I've done it. Like I went through the same thing as with CW Chanter, where he did multiple videos calling me a liar. So I called him and we had a conversation, and we have filmed multiple conversations since then. Right. And he can sit in front of me and call me a liar all he wants, and it does not bother me. He can tell me that like my thought about there being giants is actually just because my mom and dad raped me, but I know that that's not the case. So he can continue to believe that and tell me that all he wants. It really will only hurt if it was true, right? It's not going to upset me if, George St. Pierre walks up to me and tells me that he could kick my ass, because he can kick my ass, right? Like if it's true, it's not going to, affect me the same way as if I'm lying, right? If I'm lying and you're ripping apart my story, then yeah, that's going to feel really shitty. But if I'm telling the truth, it's really easy for me to just sit here and go, I can objectively understand why you don't believe me, right? And that's been the difference between me and everybody else, is I don't really sit on the laurels of that story because I don't expect people to believe it. I can talk to anybody at any time without even mentioning any of that stuff. And it's not my identity, but that's not the case for a lot of other people.
And it's very telling. It shows their character, and it shows that they lack conviction because they want to be in that echo chamber 24/7 and have people just confirming their story and not asking deep questions that challenges their story, right? Because I believe that they know that their story is going to fall apart and they don't want to look like fools.
My
Well,
mind
like
is
another
being
thing,
fucked
sorry.
up big time.
No, go ahead.
Another thing is, like, a lot of the time these interviews are scripted, right? Like the questions and the topic have been sent ahead of time, right? So if you tell me that I want to ask you about this and I want to ask you about that and I want to ask you about that, that gives me time to prepare answers for those too, right? So it's different. I personally don't let people send stuff like that, and you've dealt with me on this too, where I'm just like, ask me whatever the fuck you want. I ignore that because I know that that's what people can do, and I know that I would do it, right? And it's what we do.
Yeah, I've had people want me to send a list of questions to them, and as soon as they send me that email, they're like, yeah, can you send me the list of questions that you're going to be asking me? I just don't respond. I don't reply back because there's no point in bringing them on my show if they're already going to know the questions and that I'm going to ask them. That takes out the continuity and the natural nature of the interview, right? I think that's the fun part about an interview, is that you don't really know. And if you don't know and you're creating a bunch of fake nonsense, then it doesn't bode well for your interview. Right? Because
If I want to prove myself to someone, I want to put myself in every situation that would make me believable, right? I wouldn't want to hide away from any challenge or any test. That doesn't even make sense. It's like, I don't want scrutiny. I just want you to believe me. That, you know what I mean? Like, that's counterintuitive.
I agree.
Super bad. And I'm tired of it. And I do want to fucking know what's real.
You need to produce those on YouTube. Why?
Because it's a resource for people to be able to find each other. I found a woman that's in these programs that looks just like me, and I'm pretty sure it's my fucking sister. There's things that
my face and
it's
put
a
my hair down, look
resource.
just like you too. Does that make us brothers, space brothers? If I shave my face and I put my hair down, I look just like you too. We have a very similar chin. You just can't see it because mine's covered with a beard. We both wear glasses. We have a similar shape to the face. I've got your hair. Does that prove anything?
It actually maybe does, but that's the whole nother fucking story. We're not going to go into that right now.
Your inability.
We're not going to go into that right now, Shane. The fact that.
And by the way, Shane, if you ever wanted to pause at any point, just put your hand up and I'll pause it.
Fucking each other.
Making this impossible for me.
What's that?
Your inability to interpret and represent reality correctly makes this impossible for me.
Well, I would just think you're being an asshole personally, and
Okay,
I would
one second. Just to follow the interpretation. When we talked after this is where apparently I threatened to end the interview because I was being an asshole. So I just very calmly explained to him why we can't continue this conversation if he's going to continue to do these things. And he turned around and insulted me, right? Like, actually called me an asshole. So it's proof in the result of, even your own words back to me after this has already been done. It's in recording and you can't even interpret that correctly. Your own actions, dude. Why should anyone listening to you take you at all seriously? I'm sorry. I don't mean to be an asshole. I'm being real, though. You can't do it. You just, how many times?
Several spots through just in this interview, and not even off the interview, before the interview on social media.
And if you don't want to accept that or whatever, can you please just, answer a few more questions and try to be cordial with me for the rest of this interview?
Sure.
Okay. So we touched a bit on implanted memories, and basically you're saying, you know, that's what all of this is all implanted memories, and we were taken out of school. I just want you to really, and I'm sorry.
Wait, I don't believe you said that. You don't believe that all of it is implanted memories, right? It's a partial simulation. It's a partial implanted memory. It's a partial dream state manipulation. It's also a partial weapons system transferring of different thoughts and ideas in the people's heads. So we even got that wrong.
What I said is it's not space aliens fighting space battles. That's what.
You reiterate too much, but I think it will help me and both the viewers too. Like, what is the end game to this all? Why are they taking these kids out of school? They're trying to limit our abilities and then employ those who have them. That's what you said, right?
A little bit. It was all about taking the magic and turning it into technology, making everything technological so that they can control that. And basically, we are going through like kind of an evolution, and they knew that that was coming, and they've wanted to thwart that by making sure that they have an alternative, which is basically just mimicking everything nature is creating, presenting with technology. And that's how they take our attention away from our abilities and put it to other things. It's the same thing as religions, always having a savior, something you put outside of yourself so that you as an individual feel weak and powerless to everything, right? And that's the game that has been played over time. That's why they've hidden people's abilities. That's why they've done everything that they can to make that seem like just fiction, right? And that's also why they've implanted the thought that you guys are out in space fighting space aliens so that it sounds even more like fiction. Because all the other stuff that you've talked about like things like, you know, finishing each other's sentences, feeling like you know each other, that's all regular human shit that has been going on forever. It's the same reason a dog knows when their owner is coming home. That's magic. That's our natural abilities. And that's what they're trying to hide with technology. And the more that they have this community of people out there talking about aliens and starseeds and all this other nonsense, which deters anybody from even looking at the rest, and definitely deters any type of investigation into like the actual use of the children in these programs, you know, they're happy. And that's why they do it. And it's not just, you know, people who are in the programs. They've basically done this with society through propaganda. The Little Green Man, through these like things like the X-Files, which I didn't watch until I was 30 because I was involved with when I was a kid, because I knew that that's what they were doing. Right? But that's exactly how it has worked. Is it's the same thing as the church used to do when they, you know, used demons and angels to control people. And the priest was the only person who could talk to God, and you'd have to go through him. Well, this alternative community has been given the same type of gatekeepers, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. That would be a good segue into like Corey Good, I guess. Like, well, yeah. He's definitely, and it's been one of those things where, God, it's been something else to watch, and that's another thing that we agree on more than we disagree on. But obviously, you know, there's still a lot to unpack there. But yeah, he presented himself as a space Jesus, if you will, in his videos before. But you know, I've paid a little bit of attention to him, but he's not how I entered this community. But I just remember, and it's still there. You watch his videos. He says he's kind of like it's the space ambassador and only listen to.
That's the thing, though. You did Archeum Ra. Whether you know it or not, you still copied Corey Good's story. That's the issue. And that's the problem here.
No, exactly. And the more he talks through this video, the more it becomes clear that his, you know, memories came along with a lot of programming. Like I don't want to completely out this because he did tell it to me in privately, but he alluded to it there in the interview. Like there's a connection between me and his memories and his attachment to all of this that has to do with these dreams that he has. Right. So, you know, there's that too. And he's just not representing any of that properly, and continues to let us know that, you know, he was following, like he tells you, my videos for years. Right. So like, I mean, if I watch you on YouTube and then I go to sleep and you show up in my dream and I connect it to something that happened in my childhood, does that mean that you were in the same program as me, Ryder? Like, or is it possible that maybe I just had a dream about you because I watched you on YouTube, right? Like,
I think
I
that means that we were in the galactic space fleet together, Shane, and we were fighting aliens for 20 years, and we went to Jupiter and Mars. Makes complete and total sense to me that whenever I lay down at night and listen to these shows on the internet, that I would have a dream about it. But I think that it's real, and that's what they're doing. That's like the entire secret space program and the super soldiers in a nutshell. Is that right there? Is dreams. They'll be
and
listening.
dream connectivity, like dream sharing, is nothing new either, right? Like that's also been going on for millennia, like pretty much as long as people have been writing shit down. People have been sharing dreams with each other. It happens a lot between like siblings. You know, I have twins, like my sisters are twins. They would have it happen to them all the time, right? Where they both had the same dream at night. That's not because they were taken to some underground base together. That's not what happened. It's because they're entangled quantumly, right? And there is like things that we don't understand about telepathy, in which ways that we're connected and we're sending and receiving information to each other. And if you're both watching secret space program videos, then it's really easy to misinterpret those signs and turn them into, oh, I remember you from Project X, Y, and Z, right? But that's just people being people.
Yeah, and it just doesn't work that way with the secret space program and the super soldiers either. It works that way with anything that you watch or on the TV, TV shows, movies, podcasts that you listen to. I mean, I try and use this example all the time because normally when I watch something when I'm going to sleep, which I've been doing here more recently, I've just been falling asleep with the TV on, right? And then I'll have a dream that's very similar to the thing that I was watching because it's affecting my subconscious. And then when I go down to sleep, I dream about the thing that I was watching. That doesn't make it real, doesn't make it real whatsoever. It means that it's affecting my subconscious and it's trickling down in my consciousness and I'm making it up in my mind. But for someone, and I've always been aware of that. I've been aware of that my entire life, that how our subconscious is affected by the things that we watch, things that we listen to, the shows and the movies and the podcasts and the things that we watch and listen to.
Yeah.
And I've known that for the entire time, and I've been trying to explain that to people, but somehow they just don't get it. But that's what's going on because I've experienced it myself. And I know that when I watch something and I dream about something weird or something similar, that it's because of the thing that I watched. And if I wouldn't have watched it or listened to it, then I wouldn't have dreamed about it. It would have been about something else in my subconscious.
I had a girlfriend who, for a while, we used to do this thing about we had this waterfall that we would go to in dream time. And it was just something we would tell each other. We made it up completely. And then we started having dreams about meeting each other at this waterfall. And it was never coherent, right? Like it wasn't like we could both come out and like tell each other exactly what the other person said. But, you know, there were times where like, you know, she would say like, we were talking about this and I would remember it very similarly. But I mean, we were doing that on purpose, right? It's something that we were doing between each other. I've had another situation where, you know, I had a very, very vivid dream that I was my mother going through a very specific thing. And I was waking up that morning, having coffee, telling my ex-wife about the dream I had had when I got a phone call to find out that dream actually just happened. Right? How many times has that happened, you know, with siblings in like car accidents and shit? Happens all of the time. Einstein used to do experiments on this. He called it quantum entanglement. This is not new, and it's got nothing to do with space aliens.
Him, and then of course he has his little retreats you can go on, and the guy's making money off this, you know, hand over foot, and he has been for a long time. And my argument with the Corey Good guy is not once has he ever mentioned MK Ultra. Not once has he ever mentioned the fact that they are raping and torturing kids to fracture their minds to create new pieces of consciousness that they can throw into clone bodies. He never talked about any of that stuff. He gave it a nice, pretty image. He talked about sphere beings blue avians. And, you know, I've always thought it was a bunch of bullshit too. But, you know, obviously it's one of those things where you look at the community and you like I said, Penny Bradley, people like her compared to him, Corey Good, he's the guy that everyone's looking at. He is. And that is a problem. And I don't disagree with you, but the thing is to you, it's proof that this is all bullshit. And to me, it's proof that we have limited hangouts. We have people in the community who are trying to dissuade people. We have disinformationists. And, you know, you literally are self-admitted disinformationists. You said.
Before we get into that, I want to make the comment that I believe that it does discredit everybody else that's in the secret space program by Corey coming out and saying that he made everything up. And I challenge anybody to come up with somebody that was talking about 20 and back, secret space program, fighting aliens in space, age regression before 2012. And don't mention William Tompkins or Bob Dean. They weren't talking about that stuff. They were talking about a real legit militarization of space.
Well, he literally just kind of went on a spiral that didn't make much sense, and now he's about to turn this into, and you called yourself a disinformation agent, you know, like immediately, like, I've got nothing to grasp onto. You can actually see it in his face. I've got nothing, so I'll attack you because that's what you've got to do, right? And yeah.
That was your job in the programs.
Yep.
So, and you say
and my job, if I was still doing that, would be to sell you on the secret space program. And so that's why I speak from the position I do on that.
You know, and for me, it's like,
they wanted, I would be out there doing exactly what Corey was doing. Remember, that job was offered to me first. Right?
It is very interesting. No, definitely.
And like that's such a miscalculation on their behalf, because like, guys, like the guy who tells you he knows how disinformation works because he used to do it is the person you're questioning about whether or not disinformation works that way, when quite clearly it does, right? Like, if anything, you should be going, oh shit, if he says that's what's up, then that's probably what's up, right? If that's the game that I used to play and I've admitted to it, and I told you how it worked in that fashion, and then you guys are doing exactly the same thing, you'd think you would be able to be smart enough to put your fingers together, your hands together on that one. But, you know, it's like so many other things. We will throw out, you know, information from the same source when it doesn't suit our narrative, that we take information from as if it's absolutely the gospel from when it does, right? And that's they do it with me all the time. Like, he's done it with me within this conversation. So
now, to be clear, the disinformationalist aspect of this was that you were kind of picked to be the Corey Good and be his role before he was Corey Good. Is that fair to say that that was a part of the disinformationalist campaign, that you were meant to be him before he was him?
Excuse me, no. Before all of that, I had done a thing where we did a bunch of like paranormal work, right? Like a bunch of like collecting actual factual data of various sorts about the paranormal, like the various stuff that I say that they're occulting, right? And I had done it under the guise of, we were going to create a re-education package for schools so that people could learn about like the difference between the body and the soul and all the different dynamics that we're aware of in there. And all of that got occulted or buried after we did that. Right. So in that's my working as a disinformationist. Right. And what it was like right at the point in time where this whole Gaia TV thing, David offered me that job. And obviously, if I wanted to do it, I would have to do a shit ton of lying, which I wasn't willing to do. Right. And that was it. Is if I wanted to, or if I was still a disinformationist, I would have just done that job, because I would have got paid for it twice. Right? I would have got paid for it by Gaia for doing it, and I got paid by this Illuminati as well, right? So it, once again, his cherry picking of data points has kind of worked against him here. But the fucking result, dude. Like, that's what I mean. Like, there is proof to the reality here, and you don't want to look at that because it doesn't quite validate your version of the story, But what
I mean,
all
my
is
version of the
supported
story is I got
reality.
kidnapped out of school when I was a kid. I know I got tortured. I know I was at Montauk, and there's evidence. There's the cages. Preston Nichols showed it all. They were talking about time travel and shit. They weren't talking about figuring out how to use technology on people. I mean, can we go into that a little bit? Like, what about those guys? What about all the stuff they're talking about? Are you familiar with that at all?
Built on compounded nonsense by people who used to work with for the people that I do, right? Like, and that's the thing is, like, you guys aren't hearing me say that. I've been watching this community since 2006. I've been watching Project Camelot's birth, and I've been watching all of the nonsense get peddled by them. And then that gets splintered into Project Avalon. And that's going back to before you even knew any of this was going on, man.
I've been watching
And all of that
videos for a long
time. Let me finish, please, because all of that foundation has just been built on generation after generation. New wave of listeners just builds on the last one, but that foundation was always bullshit. So, like Montauk, like there's nothing at Montauk. There's something near there in the general area of Montauk.
You can literally find video of Preston Nichols going to the cages where they kept the children and explaining that's where they kept us. Also, like, you can find that.
This is gold right here.
No, you can't. Well, you can something that looks like that. I can also find Corey Good doing a bunch of stuff as well.
Bullshit.
Right? I can find
bullshit. He literally went there and showed the cages where the kids were held, and nobody listened. Nobody cared because it was all time travel and space aliens.
It's an animal testing facility. That's exactly what it is. How many things washed up on the shore of Montauk Beach over the 70s, 80s, and 90s? Lots, but you're too young to remember that.
I just think that it's one of the, I know about that, and I know about the chimeras and stuff they were making.
But yeah, that's got nothing to do with the cages, right? That doesn't explain the cages. No, they kept kids in them, and you were one of those kids. Come on.
Yes.
Man. Yes.
Yeah. I 100%.
You just told him what the cages were used for, and then he continues to believe that he was one of the kids that was in the cage.
This is why we should definitely subscribe to his channel and listen to his stories to try and figure out our own healing, guys. You know, like, come on.
Believe that.
Yeah. Makes perfect sense.
Well, no, I think that it's kind of one of those things where it's just.
And I'm not even denying that they keep kids in cages, because I know that they do. I just know that they don't at Montauk. And I know that all that whole Montauk myth is there to, again, hide what they're actually doing.
Which is kidnapping kids, you know. Let's be fucking real.
And yes, a lot of raping kids and a lot of torturing kids.
And a lot of satanic ritual abuse.
Would you like to see some scars? I could start showing you some scars, man. Yes, they do all of this stuff to kids. And yes, majority of them don't have the vantage point that I have, because there's a certain percentage of us that don't get hypnotized and don't black out from things. Like, my receptors for pain don't make me black out. It's really hard to even put me under an anesthetic for an operation if I need one, because my conscious mind just keeps fighting. And that's not unique to me. There's a very large percentage, well, I shouldn't say a large percentage, but there's a percentage of human to which that's true. That's why I was able to remember the things the way that I do. I also fully understand that most don't. But how can
I also think that, like, a lot of things I say, you have to put, I think with a lot of the things you say, it's a lot like the things I say. You just have to trust that you're telling the truth. And I just think it's a little ridiculous that you act like you're not any different than me when it comes to the claims that we're making. Like, dude, you got to phase into a hologram to go to another planet? Okay, you can really prove that scientifically. Meanwhile, I can look out the window with a telescope and see Mars. But I'm the fucking crazy one for thinking that would be the logical way to get there, instead of just getting something and go there. Like, no, you know?
If you...
Isn't that what they say, though? Isn't that what a jump room is?
Yeah.
Isn't that what they talk about? Isn't that what they say that's going on?
Even in their own stories, they don't just get in something and go there, because in their own stories, the getting inside there and go, like, he used it to discredit it earlier, right? Where he's like, putting gasoline in there. It doesn't have to be that, right? It's like, that's not what you guys say you're doing. You're going through portals. Well, guys, like, anybody who believes that you've been through a portal in a secret space program, go to a convenience store, buy yourself some salvia, smoke salvia, and then you can tell me about the portal you go through smoking salvia. Guess what? DMT does the same thing. You know what else does? You have a significant amount of mushrooms. You know what else does? Ergot poisoning. mercury poisoning, a variety of other things that are chemicals that induce our brain to go through what appears to the experiencer like a wormhole or portal, right? And if we can induce that with drugs, it's probably a lot more likely that that's what you guys think you are remembering, right?
Couldn't agree more. And I think a lot of this boils down to, I've mentioned it with you before, and I've mentioned it on other shows, is drugs and, drugging people. I mean, that's where all of the drugs came from, was directly out of the MK Ultra programs. I mean, I've mentioned this several times before, and I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but it wasn't just LSD and mushrooms. It was antidepressants. It was antipsychotic medications. It was Adderall, Ritalin, and all that. And guess what they give to children when they have ADHD? They give them Adderall or Ritalin, and you couple that with a simulation or a frequency device or an implanted type of memory, you're 100 times more susceptible to it. I think that drugs, a lot of these psychedelics and even the amphetamines, open up some kind of like doorway or a perception type doorway in our mind. And once that doorway has been opened, you don't necessarily have to be on the drug anymore in order to have these thoughts, ideas, and beliefs infiltrated into your mind. Because I'm exactly like you, Shane. I always keep my consciousness, like I've never blacked out doing anything ever. Not drinking, not using drugs or any of that. I've always kept my consciousness and knew exactly what was going on. I was always fighting, fighting inside my head. And that's a really important aspect, because I believe when people let go, right, whenever they're in that state, whether they're on LSD, mushrooms, or some kind of amphetamine, and they let go completely, that's what opens up that door of perception in their mind, and they're easily infiltrated. What do you think of that?
Absolutely. Like that's why, like, was it, I think it's pretty sure it was the Charles Manson example where they were using the LSD while he was in prison to basically MK Ultra him. And then he was going out using LSD to get his followers, to get them into a suggestible state. But I guess he wasn't actually doing the LSD along with them. A lot of the time he was doing the programming. That's because he was programming, right? And that's the thing, is like, and I again, just kind of speaking from my own experience, one of the ways that can kind of get you out of these things is by taking too much LSD on your own time, right? Because it's the same, it has the same effect. And if you take LSD and watch a movie, it has a very profound impact on your memory, right? Like I'm sure anyone who's ever watched a movie on psychedelics remembers that experience very vividly, right? And how weird it was. Well, that's what's going on, right? If you dose someone up, especially if a person doesn't know that they're dosed, right? Like there's a difference also between taking LSD and knowing that you've taken it, and then all of a sudden, like maybe like finding yourself in that state, right? And there are videos online, they're black and white videos of them doing that to people and filming it, and you can see the outcome, right? The only thing that's changed is, like, the religion of the times isn't angels and demons, it's aliens now, right? And the programming so works in that direction, and it works because it fits the technology that we have today and science, right? So there's so much there as an example of how you guys have created these stories in your brain that your refusal to look at them is offensive. You can take a telescope and you can see Mars. How come you can't see your spaceships having battles up there, Dick? Come on, man.
You can't see it. People see shit all the time.
You cannot. No, you
okay,
cannot.
That's just a matter. People see stuff all the time. People see stuff all the time. You can even find videos. It's out there. You can see shit.
This is the difference. Is I do not constantly, on a regular basis, act emotionally and misrepresent you and reality You do
I don't
that.
think I do that to
And
you either.
therefore, I can trust my experience, and I can't trust yours.
I
So
can't trust you. I can't trust your experience.
And I don't.
either.
I'm not asking you to. Did I invite you on my program to have a conversation with me? No, I
I
didn't.
still appreciate you talking with me. I do. I
Come on,
really
man.
appreciate it.
Like, can we just agree that we do not agree on this? That
Yeah,
you
there's
want
some
to
things that we
believe
don't
that,
agree
I'm going to
on.
let you believe that, but stop bothering me about it. Stop trying to misinterpret and misrepresent me because of your emotions.
You sound very emotional right now.
I
It's
am
very
emotional
ironic.
because I'm pissed off that you keep misrepresenting and misinterpreting me. At least I'm admitting that that's what I'm
the
doing.
reason why I have you on
You
the show.
just trolled me. You just trolled me for 3 months. You just trolled me for 3 months. I'm sorry if I'm a little pissed at you, dude. Like, of course I am.
Yeah, and to the fact that, I mean, if these space battles and these and all this stuff is actually going on, your point is exactly right. Why can't anyone see it? Right? How many amateur astronomers do we have just in the United States? You know, I mean, China's got a huge telescope. I think that China has like the biggest telescope in the world. Like, why haven't they seen any of these space battles?
Did we not just have like a global catastrophe over a fucking balloon? I mean, you know what I mean? Come on. This is silly.
I'm not going to do that anymore. And there's really, I don't think I've misinterpreted you at all. You said that you could fight us because we don't look like super soldiers.
Is that not true? Do you want to fight? Come
I
on, man, I'll do it.
I don't. I think I
No
appreciate
problem.
your humor in
Let's
this
light you
situation, but
and
no.
Matt up at the same time.
What?
Come on. That's what I mean. Like, that's a childish response from both of us. But I'm just responding to you in kind because you're like mad. What? Because I think I could. You can't fight. You can't fight.
No, this is
You're
the
not
reason.
a super soldier, man. It's a period. I'm sorry that that's true, but you're not.
So what? Why do I?
I'm fully willing to accept that you were involved in MK Ultra. I'm fully willing to accept that you've reprogrammed all those memories by taking LSD recreational and listening to people talk about aliens on the internet. But you're not a super soldier, and I could fight you to prove it. So where am I being an asshole in that? That's just the truth.
I don't think that's the truth at all. I think you're oversimplifying things. I think that I have implanted memories, and I when I talked to you on the phone, we touched on that a little bit, and you agreed
He has implanted memories, but false memory syndrome isn't real.
with me that I probably had implanted memories. You didn't say,
Did I not just say that again? I said I'm willing to accept that. But once again, you're still not going to
now
space.
if I took LSD and watched videos on the internet, it's one or the other. It can't be both, dude.
You're still not going to space and fighting space aliens, and you're not a super soldier.
Maybe I'm not. That's what we're trying to get to the bottom of. I believe that's happening to me. I believe that's happening to me. I do not.
Entire point, though, right?
I do not want to believe that's happening to me. It doesn't make my life easy. It makes people think I'm crazy. It makes my life fucking terrible. To sit here and say that it makes like I want to do this and I'm doing this for attention. That's classic gaslighting, dude. I'm not doing this for attention. That's not why I'm here. That's like what they tell people of satanic ritual abuse, and the reason why they were saying, "Oh, I was brought to this place and used in this weird ritual with people in robes and blah blah." Oh,
really
you want attention?
Like Corey Good. Because
what's that?
People really do that, like Corey Good, right? Like, look at the Me Too movement. Are you telling me that every person was telling the truth? No, they weren't. Because that is true. People do that.
Yes,
and you
definitely.
have proven
100%.
yourself as capable of that. So it's a very logical assumption to think that that's still what you're doing, right?
To what I'm. Excuse me. Sorry. What am I doing?
You've proven that you are capable of misrepresenting and misinterpreting reality based on an emotional response and taking action to get attention based on that. So
I don't think that you keep saying that. That's just you saying something. That doesn't make it true, dude. You can keep saying it over and over again.
You
It doesn't make it
apologize
true.
for it. It's in text messages.
I apologize.
I can demonstrate it to everybody. It's in a long list of comments. You had multiple meltdowns, multiple temper tantrums on multiple sites that all prove what I'm saying is absolutely true.
I had an emotional response to what you were saying about us. I never disagreed with that. But the reason why I responded to you wasn't for attention. The reason why I responded to you is because I wanted to sit down and have this conversation with you right now.
Wanted my attention.
Yes.
Your own
I
word.
want to have
Your own
I
word.
wanted to have a conversation with you about this stuff. It's important. This isn't a joke to people. You can sit here and say, "Oh, sexy
We
space
had
stories."
already
Ha, ha,
had
ha.
the
You don't have to-
conversation. We had already had the conversation. We had already one-on-one come to an understanding. He wanted to do this for YouTube and his audience. Fact.
Absolutely. And then he's saying that he doesn't want attention, but yet wanted to get your, is that how you get someone's attention, is criticize them and
Call
troll
them
them
names.
online and stuff? Is
Yeah.
that really how you do it? I don't know about you, Shane, but if I want to bring somebody on my show, I just reach out to them. I send them an email, I message them on Facebook, and I'm like, hey, would you like to come on my show? Then I give them some dates, right?
Well, that's exactly it. And if that was his intention, then the conversation him and I had one-on-one would have sufficed. But he wanted to take it a step further and have this conversation so that his audience could also hear it. Right? And I think by now we can establish that it's not because he wants them to heal, it's because he wants to continue to be able to perpetuate his SSP nonsense stories with them. So, continue.
You don't have to sit with your friends with a
even though
fucking
you and I
crying.
have had a personal conversation and clarified that, you keep misinterpreting and misrepresenting what I said. You just did it
What am I
again.
misinterpreting now? What am I misrepresenting now?
The sexy space stories are going to fucking space and fighting aliens. The sexy space stories are not kids getting raped in cages, right? That is what I said.
There's stuff
right?
like
And
there's
you not
stuff
just
like
misinterpret,
remembering.
misrepresent that again, right? So there you
No,
go.
I'm saying what's not a sexy. That's just you saying something. I'm not misrepresenting.
Yeah, he's hit you with this like several times that I've seen in comments on Facebook and comments on other sites, that he's basically attacking you for saying that the secret space program and fighting aliens in space and all that isn't sexy. It's not a sexy story, which makes absolutely zero sense to me, because it is a sexy story. It is a fantastical, unbelievable fairy tale nonsense type of story. I don't understand what he's not understanding
Pointed
by
out my
that.
point earlier when he was talking about Corey and how Corey talks about just that. He never talks about anything else that would have contributed to that. Right. So that's what his problem was, that I called it a sexy story. And like I said, he misinterpreted what I meant, right? Because that's what I'm actually saying the same thing he's trying to say. Right. It's just that I called Corey's story a sexy story, that he can't not hear that anymore. And it's like he just hears this signal of me. He doesn't understand that like it's a sexy story because fighting aliens in space is a lot sexier than my uncle used to rape me. Right?
Yep.
Misrepresenting anything. When I have memories of having children and stuff like that, and being married and memories of killing people and shit like that, that's not fun. It's not sexy. And I've just reiterated that so much. We don't have to keep going there. We don't have to fucking tumble that over and over again. But I just want to reiterate that for people experiencing
this. And that is what I said.
This is trauma.
Let me finish. I know that, and you know that. We agree on that, and that is what I said. But you misinterpreted and you misrepresented that because you were emotional to get my attention.
Whatever, man.
That is what you did.
Okay.
What you did.
Sure. No, that's what I did.
What you did. Not sure. That is what you did.
Okay. That's what I did. Sure. Whatever. I'll agree with you just to move on with the interview.
Would you like to read your own words? Because you admitted it. Would you like to read
Dude,
your own words?
We don't need to go over this. This is a waste of time.
Proof. Right, exactly. You don't want objective proof. That's right. I forgot about
that. I react emotionally to things. You're reacting emotionally to things right now.
But am I misrepresenting what you're saying? Am I misinterpreting what you're saying?
I don't think I misrepresented or misinterpreted anything you said, dude.
You absolutely.
I never admitted to that. I admitted to being combative with you. I apologize.
You just did it again with the sexy story thing. You've done.
And he did. That's like the fourth or fifth time in the interview.
In this conversation, like the entire reason this conversation happened was because you did that. And you made a video called Ruining the Ruiner because you did that. Right? So if you're going to continue to deny it, like, does character not matter to those people who listen to this gentleman? Can you not see how he is not capable of telling the truth and representing the truth out of his own mouth? Right? Like, you can't say, oh, there is no objective reality that we can all agree on. Fuck off. He can't represent his own reality correctly. Right? That is the problem. So why are we like gathering an echo chamber around these people who are incapable of doing that? Right? You're not helping the truth movement. You're not helping freedom of humanity. You are creating a circle jerk and LARPing, and it's gross, and you need to stop. All right, let's continue. Multiple times in this conversation, at which points I have pointed it out. So yes, you have. You have done it in text message. You did it on YouTube. You did it on Facebook. You have done it on 5 sources.
I think we still have a chance to have a conversation here if you keep trying to just, if you can just maybe move on from this. Like, there's still stuff we can talk about. Okay.
Absolutely, but like, I don't want to just skirt over the fact that you don't want to admit to reality and continue to talk about your interpretations of reality when you don't want to represent it correctly. Why would I do that? Why should anyone listen to you do that?
Listen to me do what? Say my side of the story, my opinion on things, and what my experiences
are.
are. And
interpreting reality. If you're incapable of interpreting any words said to you and representing those correctly, then how are we supposed to believe your dreams?
First of all, you're calling them dreams. They're not dreams.
They are.
Okay?
What else are they? Where are you getting this?
I'm entertaining. I'm trying to entertain your theory, but what I want is more evidence, more proof. I want to talk about it more.
I'm trying to entertain your theory. So you go ahead and you tell me how you got this memory back. In what form did this memory come back to you?
He wants proof of your theory, but doesn't want any of the secret space program or super soldier asset people talking about fairy tale space adventures to provide any proof. That's a double standard.
He wants me to prove that something nobody can see is not happening. Like, I don't understand what you want from me.
It's a huge double standard.
Of being in the secret space programs.
Yes.
Basically, I realized that when I was a kid, okay, when I was in school, I had a friend, and I'd seen a UFO before, he'd seen one, and we've heard about the whole concept of getting abducted by aliens and stuff like that. So I did this thing where I was like, do the automatic writing, and I must have been like 9, 10, 11, right? And I saw flashes before my eyes of, like, you know, an alien in my face and them peering into my soul and all this stuff. I freaked the fuck out when this happened, man. I was like screaming, like, and I was just like hanging out with my friend in his room when I was like 9, 10.
So you have the imagination of a 9 or 10-year-old child who just heard about alien abduction for the first time? Okay, great. Now that we've established that, continue.
11, somewhere around there. I was a young kid, not a child though, but I was getting older. And that after that, I couldn't be alone at all. I couldn't be. I was super just. Every time I like went outside, like, because my dad lived across the street, even just going across the street, it was just scary as fuck for me. And that's paired with just, even before I got the memories back, of like just having fears of being taken and stuff like that. And anyway, you know, I had a thing happen not that long
across the street, right? So that means your parents are separated and you are a young kid. So are you going through something that every child of divorce goes through, sir?
Where I was hanging out with my childhood friend that I actually sat with and freaked out or whatever, and I hadn't seen him for years. And his mom just asked me, like, what, did something really happen to you when you were a kid? And dude, I hadn't thought about this for years. Like, you know, it's like, and what I said to her was, I think something did, but I don't know what I could do about it, so I just don't go there. And she's like, okay, that makes sense or whatever. Anyway, fast forward, I had this dream.
And my head, like, fast forward, I had this dream. Okay, and we're done. Thank you for answering my question. Right? So what have you told me to this point that you have an imagination, that you were an 8-year-old kid, your parents were obviously separated if dad lived across the street, and you had some type of anxiety about crossing the street to go to dad's house, and you coupled that with like some type of fear of being taken. Well, that sounds like any psychological burden that a child of divorce goes through, my friend. Like, you are a textbook, and it's got nothing to do with the secret space program. But I mean, if that's the way you would like to interpret it, because that's more sexy, then you go right ahead, my friend.
Shane, can you explain to me how you got these memories uh, that does not involve some kind of dream?
Well, when I was a little kid, I had a friend and we both watched movies about alien abductions. And then when I was a teenager, like maybe my 20s, I went to dinner and I told some incoherent story, but then I had a dream.
Oh man, it's so ridiculous. You just asked him to explain something that did not involve dreams, and then he almost immediately went for dreams.
I was like hanging out in a room, right? It was like a white, and yes, it is a dream. So I know it's like a little smirk there. I'm totally willing to admit that this is a dream. But I had this dream, and it was in a like a white, it was like, like a lecture hall, like where a teacher would lecture you, kind of. It was all really white, really weird. And keep in mind that like I've been like looking into UFOs for a long time, and when I found that the secret space program stuff, I always thought it was ridiculous. I never could take it seriously. I always thought that
Thank you
the
for
most
proving my point. Like, yeah, thank you for proving my point. Like, you just summed up everything right there, and you don't even realize that that's what you've done. You're still sitting in your little echo chambers thinking somehow you won here, right? Because you're not hearing yourself talk, and you're not understanding the words that come out of your own mouth. I'm gonna end this conversation.
can I please, can you please
No,
just
you
let me
can finish
finish?
it with the other people who also don't want to listen to your objective reality coming out of your mouth. You've programmed yourself with nonsense because something happened to you when you were a kid. I'm sorry that happened to you.
Can you let me finish the story?
Your secret space program stories anymore, man. I'm really not.
Well, I don't want you to entertain it. I want you to explain where the memories come from and why I have them. Maybe, like I think you can help me with that.
For you. Like, all I could say is that you went through some trauma when you were a kid, and you
Yeah.
have, as an adult, put that into the secret space program world because it's available, and that's what people do. Everyone does it. If you hadn't been exposed to that, it would have been something else. If you had been brought into a church, it would have been angels and demons. But it's not. It's aliens, clones, and all of that other nonsense. And maybe you were part of MK Ultra, and maybe you were taken, but even still, all that other nonsense wasn't there. Either way, I don't want to listen to you trying to justify to me that some type of secret space program exists anymore based on the baseline you've presented within this conversation.
I don't want to justify it to you. I just want to say that I had a memory of a military dude teaching me shit with a blurred face. When I noticed the faces were blurred, I woke up. That's the memory. And it freaked me the fuck out. It made me look into what was going on because I wanted to figure out what actually happened to me and why I would have a memory like that. And I found this reluctantly, whether you want to believe it is or not. And I would admit, I'm fully willing to admit that human beings are going to look for explanations. And I'm trying to literally look for the most logical explanation to what happened to me. And
You've repeatedly told him the logical explanation several times in this interview.
He wants the big sexy story, right? Get offended again because I'm not wrong. You keep proving it. This is what you guys are doing. It's there's a word for it. It's called LARPing, and that's all it is. I'm sorry for whatever happened to you, like I said, but it all happened to you on planet Earth, and it happened to you because of human beings. So
this has been the conclusion that I've come to, and it hasn't been an easy conclusion to come to. But I don't want to sit here and tell you the secret space program is real anymore, or have you explained to me that it's not. I understand that it's kind of a frustrating back and forth, and I don't want to just waste your time. Okay. I apologize for that. But I do still have some questions for you that don't have anything to do with that. So I was wondering if you would maybe entertain just a couple more questions.
Sure. Can I share a story with you first before we get there?
100%. I would love that, because I want more from you, man. I want you. I
It's on the
appreciate
same
you
type
being
of
here.
topic. It's on the same type of
Okay.
topic, right? It's actually quite similar. So when I was, I guess, 6, so I was raised by a stepdad. I didn't really know my biological father. I guess when I was 6, I barely remember this. I have vague memories of it, but he had told my mother he was dying, wanted to see me, had talked her into letting him take me for a weekend. And, he was in and out of jail. He was an abusive, terrible person, right? And so what I remembered was being locked in the back of a car in the dark, and not knowing what was going on and freaking the fuck out. And when I was about 14, this someone I was close to, who happens to be a celebrity, Brandon Lee, had died. And the last movie he was in was A Crow, and you remember the faceplate of the crow, right? So I'm sitting there, and I had just smoked a joint with my stepdad. He's telling me the story of when I was 6 and that incident happened, and he was asking me what it was that freaked me out so bad. And when he asked me, what I remembered was being in the back of the car and looking out the window and seeing Brandon Lee's face come to the window like this. And that's what I remembered at that moment. Objectively, I know that that's not what freaked me out, that it was probably someone else's face that was doing something. And I would much rather remember that as Brandon Lee's face than that other person's face. But that's the way that it came back to me as a memory, right? And the reason why it had done that is because it was clear and present in my mind, that trauma with Brandon. And then I had some other type of trauma reminder, right? And my hippocampus, which is a part of my brain, slapped those two together on me really quickly. And if I didn't
I think that's a great point, and I think you're right. And I think that, like, I've rated the.
This is a very common thing that I've seen with contactees and experiencers, that when they first encounter what they consider to be a being or something, it always comes to them in the form of something else that's familiar to them. And this is interesting because it came to you in the form of Brandon Lee. Now, I don't believe that what these people are experiencing are necessarily ET contacting or UFOs, or if that's even real. It's just interesting how you had this experience with Brandon Lee and how others have had similar experiences with some will see Star Wars characters, some will see I believe someone's seen Kurt Cobain whenever they were younger appear to them in their room, and it's normally.
The significance of it in that case is I knew him and he had just died, right? So I was actually the conversation was actually going on about the grieving of his death. And so that's what I mean by his death was a trauma that was clear and present. And while we were having this conversation about this memory, and my visual imagination pulled back that memory, whatever that character was who was actually involved got replaced by Brandon in that character, right? And it's not even just him as a man, it's him as the crow, right? So it's and so that was the point, is that's how memory rewriting happens, right? And so if I wasn't savvy, I could be having a conversation later and maybe trying to fit into the secret space program, and I could tell that same story about how I was in a program with Brandon Lee.
Yeah.
Right. So
exactly. I find that really fascinating, because it's a manipulation of our consciousness, it's a manipulation of our brain to make us think something else happened when it really didn't. It's kind of what you're getting at there, which I think is a perfect example.
Before, I can't say that all my memories are 100% factual if screen memories exist. I just think that there's more to it than people making up stories. I think that there's connected memories, and I think that they're being implanted from some source. And I thought maybe you'd explain that is happening, that they're doing it through our phones somehow or something. I mean, you
That's
think
what
of an
I said all along,
advertisement.
right? Yeah, and sorry to cut you off. I didn't mean to cut you off this time, but like, yeah, that's, aside from the propaganda, right? There is like, I know this community calls it like a voice to skull type of technology, right? The idea that
Right.
our mind picks up resonances that aren't necessarily words and images, right? And computes that and translates it into words and images, so that we know that that technology exists. We know that can work. And that's what I wrote in that Avian's blog, which got me in all this trouble about Corey, was that the stuff that he was even reporting sounded like the program that they were putting out through that to a bunch of people that I knew who had worked on that. Right. And so that is kind of what I had said and why I had said it. So there's a layer of that that's going on. And like a lot of people who, don't even listen to this community or have any type of trauma in their life or really any reason to have these type of dreams too. Right.
Yeah.
And also have like conflicting, like maybe not even dreams. Maybe dreams is the wrong word. Sometimes it could be like a vision.
Yeah.
What I mean is it's not something that's like physically playing out in front of them. It's like a flash of memory or a flash of an image or a flash of a feeling or something like that, right? So that was what I was trying to get to about like, how did you get this memory back? It's like, it is coming in these flashes because that's how they're implanted, right? But at the same time,
Right.
that is something that everyone is also, dealing with, and that technology has also changed over time. And I know that that is even like, by my own standards, crazy to say, but that's my only honest answer. And it's not, it's not what makes me popular, and it definitely doesn't get me attention. It gets me a lot of hate for having said this, right? So it's not, that's also why I'm establishing that baseline. But the bottom line being that, I pick up on that stuff too, right? I know what it is. I could probably tune into it right now if I wanted to, because I have that ability to switch my perception, right? It's there, and a lot of people are picking up on that, and a lot of that has to do with what's going on in society right now. I mean, look at what just went on last week with like all the UFO, UPA, whatever you want to fucking call them these days, right? Like this distraction that they're rolling out on the public. And the other side is like the same community has been talking about a false flag alien, you know what I mean? So it's like, well, which of these things is true? Again,
Disclosure's coming. It's coming on this specific date at this specific time. And
exactly. And all of those people, and this is why, like, and this is why I know it feels personal, but I don't really intend it to be, but like those people present themselves the same way you would though, man, right? They would be just as sure of themselves as you are when they're saying that stuff. And I've been watching this for a long time. So if I'm like maybe short-tempered or like a little bit intolerant towards it at this point, that's why, because I've been listening to that for years now, right? And I do know firsthand that is not real. And I do know that I can't prove that to you, right? And that puts me in a position where I do kind of react emotionally because I feel bad. Like the whole reason we ever started talking is because I can like I said, man, like if I shaved my face and I put my hair down, we look a lot alike. Like I could actually like identify you like a younger version of me or like a younger brother type person. I think as like, if we were just two dudes hanging out, we'd probably get along really well. You know what I mean? And so I felt like I hurt you and I didn't like that. And so I reached out to you personally to get to that bottom of that. But again, like I'm not going to at the same time try to, yeah, if I was going to support the secret space program, I would like to get paid for it. And I gave up that opportunity.
Shit, I would too if I was. I mean, if these memories are real and what I'm going through, they should be fucking paying me. But that's a whole nother story. It's hell.
And
But
I mean,
no,
I'm not speaking out of my ass.
I agree with you.
Stuff in there too, right?
I have to be the bigger man here and agree with you that like,
Isn't that what a lot of this is about? Is money? Right? It's turned into money for doing your stories and going to these conferences and getting paid for healing sessions, because somehow, which I don't know how, but somehow every single one of these SSP and super soldier assets come back with some sort of ability. They either come back with some kind of healing ability, they come back with clairvoyance, clairaudience, remote viewing capabilities. Like, it seems like a huge grift right there.
I think that memory can be a tricky thing, and clearly it can be fucked with. And I just think that we have to be careful because I think that can be a convenient cover for when abuse does occur, when groups are hurting children, what have you. It doesn't have to be children, it can be adults too. It's a convenient cover to say, oh, well, they're just making it up. It's all fake. And it's kind of like what you're saying. We're both saying the same thing. We're like the two Spider-Mans pointing at each other. Like, I'm saying what you're saying is a cover, and you're saying what I'm saying is a cover. And I just think that whatever the fuck is going on, it's deep, it's multi-generational, and it is mind control. Our minds are being controlled. And you can see it all around you. I mean, it's not obvious. They do it right in the open. It's not like they hide it from us. They just figure the stupid people will be stupid and the smart people will,
But knowing that mind control exists, I don't understand his position here. He's saying that mind control exists and all this is mind control, MK Ultra stuff, but he's not equating it to MK Ultra being used to implant memories about a secret space program that isn't real. It's very contradicting. I don't understand his position on that. Is he thinking that people are being MK Ultra and mind controlled to believe the opposite? Like, I don't really understand his position.
That's the idea, right? That's what we're being accused of, producing a narrative to cover up what they're doing, right? And that's why he used the Spider-Man thing, because I'm saying that this secret space program is one of many narratives that cover up what's actually going on, right? And I mean, just objectively, I think that there's more. Well, maybe I'm wrong, right? Like, I think that there's more incentive for humans to blame aliens than there would be for aliens to blame humans. Like, I think that if I was part of like the Draco reptilian fleet, I would own my shit. But I guess in their little world, that's not what happens, and we just pass it off as like we'll just blame humans. But like, the characters that they tie into their stories, like I say, all die on planet Earth, right? So nobody's benefiting from all of this technology. There's nobody's benefiting from it, like not even the people who have it and are using it against you, right? My version of the story, if you will, we can quite clearly see who the benefactor is. We can quite clearly see a lot of proof in the result. And now all of the technology that makes it possible is actually available to the public. Whereas, like, disclosure, that whole thing you guys said was going to happen, right? Well, it did. It just didn't turn out to be aliens. Sorry.
I feel like him and a few other people have done this. They're trying to flip around the MK Ultra and what you're talking about with this frequency device that are planting thoughts and ideas in people's heads to make them think that they were a part of this program. I think that they're trying to flip that around on us and make it to be that they're implanting thoughts, ideas, and beliefs into our heads to cover up the fact that their testimony and the things that they're talking about is real. They think that we're being implanted with thoughts and ideas to discredit their stories and make it to where it's not real when it really is.
Well,
it's the most ridiculous thing.
The next time they hook you up to your little device that allows you to control the Omega fleet or whatever it is, just come to my house and show me. All right, just take a little detour. I mean, those things, it could happen this fast, right? I mean, if they can steal you in your underwear out of your bedroom, why can't you show up here? I've been demanding this since Corey. Like, blue avians, come land on my front lawn. Tell me that I'm a liar, right? Tell me that I'm wrong. Prove to me that you're real, right? I do want to believe. So
try to avoid it, but it is what it is. But it's there. And I just think that my opinion, and I don't want to assert it as fact to other people. I think people need to make their own opinions. But my opinion is part of the bottle of mind control is to make us think that we are the only fucking people out in the universe, that we are the center of the universe, that God is out there and Sky Daddy's going to come save us and Jesus is going to come. All these things. It's a distraction. And the one thing we can agree on is that people are being fucking distracted. Being distracted. And I think that's why emotional reactions, what have you aside, I think that we
Wait, so he believes that MK Ultra and mind control frequency devices are programming people to believe in a savior and believe in aliens, but he can't wrap his head around that same frequency device and MK Ultra could be used to make you believe that you were in a secret space program for 20 years.
Yeah, it can only make you believe in God. It can't make you believe in aliens.
So contradicting.
talk down and admit that we're being distracted, and we have a community of people who, God forbid, we were able to talk to get on the same page and get some work done and get the truth out there, the real information to benefit humanity in some way. And I think no matter what you believe, no matter what side of the coin you're on, secret space programs, implanted memories, or it's real or whatever, we all recognize that we are being manipulated, and we all feel hurt by the fact that we know things could be so much better than what they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, that hurt is real, and that's one thing I've said about it. It's like, I actually just had this conversation with someone else. Like, an implanted memory and a real memory doesn't feel any different to me, and I know the difference, right? Like you talked about, having memories or thoughts about killing someone where you haven't killed someone. I've been through simulations where I've had to kill people. And to me, like, my emotional response is like, I feel like I've killed someone, like I carry a guilt for a fucking
in the
imaginary person. You know what I mean?
In the programs, they never made you kill anyone. They never made you kill any little animals or rape anyone or do anything like that.
No. When, not for real. I mean, where did that even come from?
That just seems like a
right? Like, okay, so basically I'm making a whole shit ton of sense, and it's again making it so you're gonna have to shut down your little YouTube channel. And so your response is, so they never made you kill any animals or any, like, what's wrong with you?
You just said that they had you kill humans in a simulation, and then he turns around and asks if you had to kill any animals.
No, it was like an accusation. So they never made you, is the way that he worded that, right? So yeah. Did you kill animals on your spare time? Just
really
curious.
Good cover up for the fact that this shit is happening. Like, it's all in VR. Like, if there are kids being raped, that's not in VR. That's not virtual reality.
That's not, but that's a different thing too, right? Like,
okay.
Like, human trafficking is happening. We all know it's happening, right? Like, it's mainstream news at this point, right? Going so deep as connecting the two is maybe a stretch, but at the same time, yeah, that's one aspect of it. And this is the thing too, is like, there are people not involved with MK Ultra who get raped. Like, I have a very good friend who every Thursday night for her entire childhood, she was chained to a pool table by her dad while her dad and his poker buddies ran a train on her.
It's terrible.
And that had nothing to do with MK Ultra. That was just a shitty person doing shitty things, right? So it exists in all ways. It's not, so like, I'm obviously not denying.
I'm just saying, like, and I don't want you like to get all hurt that, or like that I'm trying to make you believe what I believe, but I believe that they are doing this in the programs, that the sodomization of young boys has been used as a technique to create and fracture altars that are used in programs for mind control, and it's ancient. It's not new.
Absolutely.
They've just gotten better at it. They do use the VR in these programs.
Yeah.
They use it. They show you images of things happening that, as a child, put you into that fracturing state much easier. Yeah. But as far as for you to tell me, the entirety of the secret space program is all in, you go in a dumb, you walk out and it's like a holodeck. I've heard what you say. Man, I have to keep my mind open to the possibility of it, but
that was one of the examples I gave. But yes.
Yeah, but right. Like it's just I'm just not able to.
He goes misrepresenting what I said because he misinterpreted what I said again. But
I mean, he is right to a degree, but he's still making it about the secret space program. He thinks that the torture and stuff that children endure, that they're doing to children or possibly teenagers and maybe even possibly adults, is all set up for this secret space program, aliens and 20 and back programs, and being a part of this fleet in space. But it's not. It doesn't have anything to do with any of that stuff. It has everything to do with what's happening on Earth, on the planet. Yes, they do everywhere, but they do those kinds of techniques. I mean, that's proven. It's part of the MK Ultra process, is torture. But something that you brought up really interesting earlier is that torture doesn't necessarily have to be this extravagant type of beating or any of that. It can be something very small and something very traumatic. And you don't have to be involved in any kind of official program to be traumatized, to have some kind of artificial memory, false memory put into your head. We can create that on our own in an everyday scenario. And that's what he's not understanding.
Yeah, I know several people who have what is now called DID. I've worked with these people. I just know some people personally, and they know exactly what caused it, right? Like, there was an event that happened and it caused them to dissociate and create an alternate personality, dissociative identity, right? Because they went through a trauma that is documented and it happened. You don't need MK Ultra for that to be true, right? Of course, yes, it is true with MK Ultra. That's what MK Ultra was based on, was basically, this is a reality of the human brain. How can we use that to our advantage, right? Which makes sense. That's what, like, every evil scientist does. That's what we do with medical, psychological, every type of science, right? We use it, we exploit it, we weaponize it. That's exactly it. So this is just a normal mechanism, our ability to dissociate and protect ourselves from trauma, right? And they have weaponized it. And the weaponization of that is called MK Ultra.
Drink that cup of tea yet. Like, I have to see a lot more.
They do it in the mainstream world, man. Like, we do this in civilian life to people, right? We run the same type of psychological simulations on people and talk about it in Vice magazine. So why would they not have done it in these programs, right?
Yeah, you got a good point. I just think that it's, some of the things that bother me that I can't, it makes me uncomfortable. But it's like, and I don't mean to like, I'm not claiming anything, but like, how are you to know that you remember every little thing that happened to you? You talk about it like getting pulled out in your underwear, like it's not happening to anyone. I think this is happening.
Dude,
to
why would
people.
why would I want to remember all of that? Right? Seriously.
Well, it's like Preston Nichols said. Why would anybody want to remember their own little horror world? That's what Preston Nichols was asked when he.
And I have to remember all of it. So please don't. Like, please just don't. That's the difference between the memories being real and you LARPing on the internet, right? Is I don't talk about those things unless I'm asked the direct question about those things. And everyone who knows me knows that. But you, my friend, can't stop talking about those things, right? So I don't know that you would feel that way if they had actually happened to you.
You alluded to this earlier. Are they really? I mean, I think Archeum Ra thinks that the military or the three-letter organizations are just running around abducting random people, doesn't matter, and then they're taking them to whatever. And I don't believe that that's actually happening. But I want to get your thoughts on that. You mentioned a little bit earlier that it was more of a volunteer kind of scenario. But these people, these SSP and these super soldier people, think that it's completely involuntarily, that they're legitimately being abducted at night and that they're going to a military base, an underground military base, a dumb, or whatever you want to call it. How is that working?
And over and over and over again nightly. Like, can you imagine the amount of resources required in doing that? Like, The reason why is because it's coupled on something real, which is military abductions, which happen, right? Like it has happened. They've admitted that they do it. Benny and Barney Hill being, a kind of an example of that, actually. But again, they're just taking something real and adding it to their story to justify a part that doesn't make any sense, right? But it still doesn't make any sense. Like they're not, even if they were to do an abduction like that, there would be a cover. And again, like they would have to be able to explain, like, where did you go? Where are you? Like they, aren't going to be able to just materialize you in and out of your room, right? And your parents aren't going to know. And that's the thing. Like the reason why they used family members was because family members would let their family members be used, right? That was why they kept it within that family for so long to begin with. And then when these people take it, it's so that they can all be included, right? It was basically an addition to the lore that got put there so that they don't have to have any actual credible, tangible connections to an organization, a family, or anything that was involved with this world, right? It's like they opened up the spectrum like they did with DID or autism or many other things so that anyone could self-diagnose as having been through MK Ultra, right? People like me, like we were on lists. People like you just showed up on the internet one day, right? It's not the same thing. Like the fact that I do remember all of it puts me at a distinct disadvantage when it comes to the traumatic response in a certain way, don't you think? Like I don't have a question as to whether or not it happened. I know it happened. I know who did it. I had to interact with that person on a regular basis after they did it, right? Like I've been passed around by people who are celebrities, who I have to interact with and listen to people talk about in coffee shops.
So I'm just like, I
I
understand, but you're saying that didn't happen to me.
I'm not
I don't
saying
know.
it didn't happen to you. I'm saying it had nothing to do with outer space, right? If you were
Okay.
if you were celebrity X and you grabbed a kid and you butters, would you rather him imagine or remember you butting him for 6 hours or going to space for 6 hours? Which would you prefer? Right?
No, I understand, but I will say that I have memories of
That is a very valid point. Very valid.
Yeah, we do that to ourselves. You know what I mean? Like we do that to ourselves. We do not want to believe, like the analogy I gave using you, we don't want to believe that person would do it to us. So we replace their image in our mind with someone else, a demon, a clown. Why do you think so many children are afraid of clowns? Right? Because it's something that your subconscious has in the room probably with you at the time. What child's room doesn't have a clown in it? Right? So that's it's all very just human stuff that they don't understand, right? Which is the bottom line here is none of them are very well educated on psychology or how their own mind works. So it makes it really easy for them to off-put it all to aliens. It's the meme, right? I don't know, therefore aliens.
Yes, that ancient aliens meme with the guy with
Yeah.
Need an explanation? Oh, it's aliens. Definitely aliens because we can't do anything about aliens, right? But we can do stuff about things that are happening on the planet, and that is what they're trying to cover up with making it about aliens.
I have memories of things that I don't want to remember them that have to do with the sexual torture, that have to do with all that shit. And some of them are shit that you say isn't real. Like I remember the Crawford School for Young Girls in England. I remember that, and you can tell me this isn't real, whatever, man. I remember that they would keep assets in that school on purpose. And another thing is that when we would do rituals at Montauk, Preston would send us in through portals to get these girls and bring them back. And I remember that he would, don't bother mind wiping them. No one will believe them anyway, he said. I remember that. And putting these poor girls back after they got brought to Montauk to get fucking gang raped in some fucking ritual. Preston Nichols would bring his dog and shit. And then I also remember that to reward the Montauk boys when they're good, he'd let us portal into that school and rape those poor girls. That's not memories that I like having. I would really love for that to not fucking be.
Let's stop making them up, dude.
When
Stop watching them on YouTube.
that's exactly right. But when did Montauk happen? How long ago was that? Like not what they're claiming that Montauk is, but it was a
Which
real facility. That would have had to have been what, in the 70s,
yeah,
somewhere around that time
I think they
frame.
closed it sometime in the early 90s or something like that, if I remember correctly. But
I
yeah,
don't think Archeum Raw was born then.
right? Yeah. But it's just easy to say, right? And yeah, it's like the Area 51 thing. Like, you really think that with all these people talking about Area 51, they're going to be dumb enough to store anything at Area 51? Right? Like, I think that if we have a name like Montauk that we can throw around, that's probably not really where it was. Right? So that's just my power of reasoning working. But hey, I don't need to LARP, so I don't need it to not make sense.
Real, Shane. Like, that'd be pretty fucking awesome.
Well, then know that the people who have put those ideas into your head are known liars. And you've just, like you said, you already admit that you understand how the memory can rewrite itself, and that they've allowed you to rewrite. Like, a lot of these people do that to people on purpose, where they're like, oh yeah, I remember you from that program. You were in this place at this time with that time. I hear it all the time, man. I've heard it like doing mainstream therapy with people not connected to the alternative community, where I shouldn't name her, a very prominent speaker in the secret space program community, no one I've ever spoken to directly, just in case anyone's listening, was named by someone in a hospital, like at CAMH in Toronto, because they had a session with that woman, and that woman convinced them that they were in the secret space program, when the truth of the matter was that their dad used to use them as a party favor. Right? So it's like, I know it's not sexy, but at the same time, it's easier for you to believe you were at Montauk than probably whatever the truth would have been, right? If it were like, say, someone you cared about, someone close to you, someone you had looked up to at the time. It's much easier to think it was MK Ultra at Montauk than it was my dad, right? And if you don't think that doesn't happen, it does, right? And I'm not saying that that's true for you, but that's the problem here, right? Is for every one person who is telling the truth, there's probably a dozen people who are definitely not, right? And where I can tell the difference, because of my experience with it, is when they start talking about going to outer space. When I hear that,
Whoa, I just saw an orb, dude, float up in front of you.
it was a car driving by.
Oh, okay.
big deep breath there, right? Like, oh, that kind of shit too. Like, that's another little game that the alternative community plays too, is like these very easy to explain tricks of light that are, orbs or signs or spirits walking in, and oh man, it's funny. But yeah.
That was an orb from a star seed, Shane. What are you talking about? You're a star seed. You're an incarnated 12th dimensional Pleiadian from Jupiter.
If
Not
I
even
was
from Pleiades.
And if I was Joseph Powell and I was doing his show, I would have totally ran with that.
Well, when I watched that the first time, I laughed so hard. That was classic. Classic moment right there.
Sometimes things aren't as they seem. Isn't that what we're talking about right now?
There's a window right there. The car had just driven that way. I was actually looking at it at the time. But yeah, that's, there's a little bit of both going on here. And, for me, the proof is in the result. The stuff that I have said going back 10 years now is all mainstream right now, right? Like, that's why I've been a little bit more comfortable talking about the use of VR with MK Ultra and stuff like that, because they're using it in the mainstream world right now, right? These neural imaging softwares, they're using in the real world right now. Holographically implanting memories, they're doing in the real world right now, right? It's not even in programs or underground bases anymore. So, and which was something my blog actually predicted would happen back in 2016, was by about now, all of that stuff would be mainstream. And I said in a podcast back there that if we don't have the disclosure that everyone's talking about by 2018, then I think it's about time for all the secret space program people to pack up shop and start looking at what actually happened, which is that they went through the regular MK Ultra just like the rest of us, and that they've been led to believe a bunch of nonsense. Because one thing I know is, like, the lie, like to quote Richard Hoagland, the lie is different at every level. I spent my entire life finding out that what I just believed for the last 3 years was complete bullshit. Right? It's like Scientology, where it's not until you get to the top level that you find out about Xenu. It's very similar when you go through there. Like, when my first belief structure was like, I think there was something like 13 or 14 different ET races controlling humanity. And then eventually I realized, was told, no, it's only about 4. And then I'm like, no, it's actually 5. And then eventually it was none, you know what I mean? And it was like the culmination of all of that experience where I finally came up with my own conclusion, not what I was told. Right? What I know of beyond fact is I have seen countless occurrences of them implanting space-based memories into people. I have seen 0 occurrences of them sending human beings to space.
So have you interacted with Draco or any ET, or have you ever been on other planets or on ships? No.
I've thought I was, like, I've been through simulations. I spent a long time, actually, when I was quite young. It was all underwater. But when I looked out the window, I thought it was space. And I didn't find out until probably about 10 years later that I wasn't actually in outer space. But I believed that whole
time. Because I remembered watching an interview with you at one point. I don't remember which it was, but I could have sworn that you said that you had interacted with the Draco and that you were used at one point to interact with ET.
I said no to the spaceship thing. I've never been on a spaceship. I've never been to outer space.
But you've interacted. So, like, on the surface of Earth, you've interacted with aliens.
Yes. Well,
okay.
We can't let this one slip by, Shane. Tell us about your interaction with aliens on the planet.
Well, in some of these places there are, I guess, just the Draco reptilians that, still live, that have been here for a long time. The coming and going is very rare. And the other part that I call bullshit is, like, very, very few humans would ever have any contact with them. Like, the part that, these things, like, they're prevalent in every program and they're all over the planet and everything. No, it's like a handful, maybe. And, very small, very almost a non-factor. And then the other part that he's referring to is, like, the being able to communicate, like, being able to understand communication that is not from planet Earth, right? Which is communicating with ETs, if you will, right? So that's, again, just kind of a misrepresentation of it. But yeah, again, I have, but I personally, even though I would say that I have a really hard time believing someone else who said that they did, right? Because of just how small that spectrum is, I guess, how few were actually interacted with here. And I may bring it up in here, like, where my family is related to Paul Hellyer, who, did sell that story about there being a galactic federation and them being in contact with the Canadian government. And he was the former defense minister for Canada, right? So, like I said, I've been exposed to all of it. I've heard a bunch of different stories, but all I can really speak to is my direct personal experience, and that's what I've seen. So,
were these reptilians that you had interactions with, were they physical? They were physical
yes.
beings?
Yes. Like, standing in front of me, just like a human standing in front of me.
Did they look like the classic representation of reptilian beings?
No, they I think the closest representation was actually in Zack Snyder's version of Justice League, Steppenwolf, and beings that kind of look like that. I remember one of the first things I had thought was, like, why do you call them reptiles? Because to me they didn't look like reptiles, right? And yeah, and that's all the drawings I see, all of the firsthand eyewitness reports I hear report them being reptiles. And that's the part where I'm like, I don't see dinosaurs when I see them. So, or I didn't see dinosaurs. And again, it's not, I've seen them next to humans, I've seen them in the same room as humans. and they're, something you could actually physically touch. But again, not quite to the extent that this lore encapsulates.
Do they have tails?
No.
How tall are they?
Variety, I guess, between like I again, a kid, a lot of the times I've seen them, so they probably seemed a lot bigger to me a lot of the, like at that time. My guess would probably be about between 10 and 14 feet tall.
So taller than an average human, then.
By
Absolutely.
far, yeah, by far. And
So
no, I
you
don't believe
said
it's a shapeshift.
so you said that they are like an ancient species, so that wouldn't make them alien or extraterrestrial. The only thing that would someone would think that they would be alien or extraterrestrial is because they look differently than us, but they're
Non-human.
actually from here, right?
These particular ones, yeah, the ones, any of them that I saw had basically spent their entire life here, which, does that not, and they're not human, but does that really make them extraterrestrial in the way that we would define it? Just non-human species, right?
And what were their role? What was their role in being there with you? What were they doing?
Well, in that particular position, it's kind of hard to talk about because it's associated with plans that don't really make sense to the average listener, right? So it'd be hard to like describe what was happening, but basically what they were, the Illuminati was founded by these Draco, and they were here kind of all along to make sure that things ran properly, right? Like almost like appointed generals in a military. The difference is that they, would be here a lot longer than the average human would be, right? And yeah, I think that's the best way I can explain it. What are they doing? Like they're not, it's more like an advisory, making sure that things run properly. They would have some type of contact, obviously, with the rest of the Draco, wherever that is in space and time, or whatever you want to call that, right? Whatever realm that is on, and just making sure that the plan ran properly. And so by
It's
the
really
time I saw them, they were really not a factor. Like I said, like it's they were there because they're still here, but they're not really the ones running the show. The ones running the show were humans.
that's really interesting. Did they speak? Did they talk normally?
No, like they don't like speak English, if that's what you mean.
Yeah.
No, they have a language that, I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me, right? Like if you hear them talking to each other, I can't make it out. But yeah, I guess whenever humans get to the point that we are interacting with, the various other life forms that are out there, it's because we've also kind of established a little bit of a different way of communicating. Maybe let's call it telekinetically or telepathically, right? Which is something that we're capable of. We do to some extent all the time, but isn't, let's say, far enough along, isn't a skill that we've developed enough to be able to properly interact with a lot of these other races, right? So like even trying to like go interact with someone, if you like visit Mexico and you don't speak Spanish, you're going to have a tough time. If you were to multiply that by 10 by saying it's another planet or another other life form altogether, then that's going to be very different. Because even like concepts are tied into language, right? And so if like a concept on one planet doesn't fit the concept of this planet, how would they ever express that to us? So a lot of things to consider when it comes to communicating with, beings on other planets that goes beyond just a language barrier.
But they made audible noise, though. It was just in
Yeah.
a different language. You could hear them speaking, you just couldn't understand them because some people have claimed that they, like they do with all of the any supposed ET or alien, they say that they speak telepathically, but these beings were speaking audibly, right?
To each other, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
under the surface of Earth, as we would say. So, yes.
So
On this,
okay, I
on
think that's an important thing to point out. That like, it seems like things that are true, like the fact that the Draco are real, the fact that there are aliens, blue, like if they're blue and they're here to save us all and shit, that's probably not true. But the fact is that these beings do exist. I think that some people might be a little confused by that, but that's something that you've been able to reiterate here is like, you're not saying there isn't life on other planets. You're not saying we're alone in the universe. You're just saying that the way that things operate is completely different than, well, especially the secret space program type people are saying.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not denying that there's aliens. I'm just saying that our interaction with them is not what these people are reporting. We're not sending humans to other planets to fight wars or fighting anyone in underground bases on Mars or any of that type of nonsense that comes along with it. Human history goes back way further, and our technology has been way more advanced than it is today. Something that the mainstream world is actually kind of starting to catch up to, or at least somewhat admit. And a lot of that did have to do with this history having a prior experiences with ETs, right? And so all I'm saying is the people in control right now are not doing the things that a lot of the SSP community are saying that they are. There's no Dark Fleet, there's no Alliance Fleet, there's no any of those fleets out there fighting space battles. There's nothing going on between the Nazis and the fucking betas that
Have you ever heard of the
Antarctica? All that kind of stuff is the stuff I'm saying isn't happening.
Have you heard about the leak? I believe the man's name is Derek McMillan. And basically, it was a leak. It was like a WikiLeaks type deal, and he hacked, the government's computers, and he found information
Harry
on
McKinnon, when he found Solar Warden,
yeah,
which is
Solar
Space
Warden
Force today. That's Space Force today. It's a satellite system for weapons. Satellites.
Yeah,
that's what it is. It's what it's always been. And of course, at that time, we didn't know, and it was classified. And
well,
people took a name, and
that's not the way he worded it. He said that
because they were saying non-terrestrial, right? But the non-terrestrial
like
also means water, right? A
Okay.
non-terrestrial is also a submarine is a non-terrestrial vehicle, and non-terrestrial personnel are people who work on submarines. So it didn't need to mean what the alternative community made it mean. But a lot of conferences, and again, that's going back to like, when was that? Like the 80s or 90s, right?
Mhm.
Before the internet was there, and it was conferences that were really driving the show back then. And all those conferences, as we know today, were mostly funded by the CIA and the FBI and all the people also perpetuating MKUltra experiences, right? So
The people that I'm familiar with from like that era, and like I said, like the secret space program stuff, it kind of did strike me as, okay, like I kind of found it hard to believe, but I did believe that I had experiences. Some of the people that I really liked, Dr. David Jacobs. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Dr. Carla Turner. I was just interested if you knew them, because they don't talk about, neither one of them ever said anything about secret space programs or anything like that. And it was very, especially with Dr. David Jacobs, it was very empirical research. He basically would interview different abductees, and he wouldn't even consider their testimony unless it matched up with somebody else that he already talked to. And his conclusion was that there's a hybridization program with these gray aliens, and he didn't make a conclusion of why or anything like that. He just said it's really alarming, whatever is going on. He's still alive, but I'm just curious, what is your opinion on that? Like, do you think that program's real? Do you think that there's like the Zetas hybridizing with humans and stuff like that? Do you think that that's actually happening, or do you think that's some more like SSP poppycock shit or something?
I think it's a situation where, blaming that on some mythological ET is a good way to cover up the fact that they've been messing with our genetics, right? Like that's a lot of what the new I call it a lollipop, those things that they're giving people due to that alleged illness going around, right? That type of genetic rewriting is the hybridization program. It is turning us into basically a new version of humans, like actually altering our genetics. And it started environmentally with like phthalates and a bunch of other, I'm not a chemist, so I couldn't rattle off all the chemicals, but it started on a chemical level, getting women on birth control, getting, all these different things, different programs going on, the plastics, the shit in the air, the shit in the water, all of it, soy, all of the above, right? That's the hybridization program. It's actually altering us, and it's real. I mean, we can actually see it on planet Earth right now. And that's what this split is in humanity that's going on right now, where it's almost like, you've got basically cyborgs, right? Like a lot of people are at least partially cybernetic today, right? And increasingly so as we move forward. And as happens with organs, right? Like if I donated, you have to have specific markers in order to accept a donated organ, right? Or your body will reject it. Same is true with technology and implants, right? I actually have one in my foot that my body continually tries to fight out. And it causes a lot of pain, and that's my body trying to reject it. The same would be true for anything else that they plan on putting into us. Neuralink, Google Eye, or the eyesight is the one that Apple's making. All of these different enhancements that they have planned for humans all require our genetics to be altered, which is hybridization, right? And so once again, just putting that out of reach story on top of what humans are doing is very true. But
well, there's like there's the aspect of it where women will like get pregnant, and then they'll like remember being on a spaceship or whatever, whether that's memory is real or not. But they're taking whatever, it's aliens or whatever. They're taking the fetus from women.
Yeah,
they're like getting them
that was
pregnant
happening
and
a lot
taking
during the 80s and 90s and early 2000s.
big time. Yes.
Yeah. And now it's happening to the entire public, which is also, kind of what I've been saying, is all the stuff that was going on in programs was all meant to be brought into the public, and now is. And that's where the proof comes in the result. Okay.
What are your thoughts on
I agree with that so much, and it's the easiest way to just blame it on aliens again because how long has the alien hybridization process been a thing in the community? People have been talking about that for decades and decades and decades, right? It's to blame it on
the X-Files too, right? Scully's baby. Yeah.
It's to blame it on something outside of yourself, so that you don't have to take responsibility for exactly what's really happening. But I want to touch on something really quick about this implant in your foot. Now, you don't have to, go on about it for too long because you've already talked about it several times. I think that you've talked about it on my show as well. But what is the purpose for the implant in your foot?
Well, this was I was born in the 80s, so I've been involved with that type of stuff since like 84. And so this is like an old school RFID chip, basically, tracking device.
Interesting.
Clonade? You ever hear about that?
Well, like cloning facilities are something I'm familiar with. I'm not Clone-Aid. I don't know the name, but
well, I remember growing up in the 90s, they basically were like, it was all over the news that they cloned a sheep, and then they're going to clone a human. Yeah, then they're going to clone a human, and they claimed, I don't want to say wrong because it's so long ago, but I swear I almost remember that they claimed they were either they did clone a human and they did it successfully, or they're going to. But basically, it seemed like the news stopped talking about it, and my perception of it is that it's all been shut down. But people are saying it's still around. They're saying there are clones. And you've got
as designer babies.
Yeah, there's like celebrities and stuff like that saying that they have clones all the time in interviews. People are thinking they're joking. I don't know. I want to keep my mind open to like that. Maybe there aren't clones, and maybe it's all bullshit. And I want to believe the truth. And if that's not true, the programming goes deep for me, and I have to have a lot of work to do. But I do think there's evidence if you look. I think there is
I
evidence.
absolutely believe that they've cloned us. Yeah, I've talked about that openly as well. Cloning, the way that Donald Marshall presents it as like a form of entertainment, is a real thing, right?
Who's Donald Marshall? I'm not familiar with him.
He was a whistleblower who claimed involvement with what he called cloning facilities, which were basically like underground facilities where they would like manufacture genetic clones and then basically move your soul out of your body and put it into a clone and then torture you and do a bunch of shit to you and then put you back.
Yeah. So do you?
And that involved reptilians and him making music for the establishment and all kinds of fairy tale stuff as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Why would they do that to people, just for entertainment? Like,
Yes, exactly. Like
that's pretty fucking sick. I'm not saying it's not possible.
no, it is very
But,
fucking sick. But so,
yeah, like
so
people
is everything else
are
that they're doing,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
I just, I think there might be more to the story than that. But I like
There is. That's what I mean. Like it's basically like so the super soldier program is obviously something that was real. The idea being to try and push the human body to its absolute potential. Bottom line is the human body can only get pushed so far, right? And then we move into robots, which is where we're going now. So the cloning experiments were to see how far we could push that. And I mean, in North America, this sounds like science fiction, but if you go to China, it's not, right? Like they do clone people in China. They have cloned people in China. They have genetically enhanced people in China. They are rolling out artificial wombs and all of that type of stuff there. And that's all the fruits of what we call the cloning program.
I'm glad that we touched on that. So, because it's like with a lot of this stuff, if people don't look deeply into what you're saying enough, they might think that you're saying it's not real at all. It's total fiction. But normally, that's not the case. It's not that you're saying it isn't real. It's saying that people's perception of it is flawed.
It's the representation and the interpretation of it that ends up being flawed. And that happens because there is this, and I'm sorry, but like this story of aliens is a lot more attractive than the reality, right? The fact that this is humans doing this to humans and humans being shitty humans doesn't sound nearly as nice as shitty aliens, right?
Yeah. Well, I've most of my memories are of shitty humans doing stuff to me. There's not many of aliens, but yeah, I don't know. I think we did a good job covering most of the stuff that we wanted to talk about. I guess my maybe like one last question, like you've been in several programs. You said one of them was kind of like going around and kind of like getting information on paranormal type activity, like and then basically like you thought like you were told that you're going to disclose it, and then at the end of it all, it's like, actually, no, we're going to use this all. Thank you. We're going to use your information to cover all this shit up.
Oh, and by the way, we've been making a TV show, which we've been putting out, which totally makes what you're doing seem absurd to the general public. That was the other kick in the nuts, was finding out what they were rolling out into the public at the same time. It's the same thing as like, their portrayal of magic in movies being a little bit over the top so that we don't believe it, right? And so that we
I agree with that 100%. And I would argue with I would think that for me it'd make a great point of that's why being in space, being with aliens, fighting in battles, clones, all the shit seems ridiculous to us. It doesn't mean that it can't be real. And that's been my argument from the beginning. But I didn't have you on the show to try to get you to believe what I'm saying. I actually more had you on the show to try to get my head wrapped around what you're saying better, because I've only been able to get what you've told other people and the interviews that you've done with other people, and they're not always asking like the questions that I have myself. And I appreciate you sitting down with me and actually letting me ask these questions, especially considering that I know that I frustrate.
How many times have you answered these exact questions on other interviews?
Yeah, it's and we had this conversation privately too. It's just, and again, proof in the result. He didn't hear it. He's already blocked me again on everything, right? Because I'm a disrespectful prick apparently, and yeah.
Hey, when you've repeated yourself over and over and over and people don't seem to get it through their head, you have to come at it at a different angle. And that's very frustrating, Like I think it is frustrating. I would have been just as frustrated as you, and I don't really necessarily see that you were that frustrating to be called disrespectful or being called a dick. But that's just my personal view.
Frustrated you at one point, and like I said, we didn't exactly get off on a great foot, but I think that this was great. I'm sorry if that if again you got frustrated, but I really did try to be patient with you, cordial with you, and respectful towards you and what you had to say. I think that we need more of that in this community. Because is it even a community? I don't know. Nobody can even agree on fucking anything. But I think that if we sat down and talked more, instead of asserting that we're correct, because I have to be able to admit that I can be wrong. I think that it's better to give people like the ability to decide for themselves, and that's what I try to do here. And I hope even you can agree I did a fairly good job. I'm sorry if I faltered at all on that, but I tried.
That was none of your fault at all. That was my own point in this, right? It's just that it's hard for me to have a conversation with someone who's giving me that story because I know too well, right? It's like it's almost like, for me, speaking to a lot of other people in this community is probably equivalent to a lot of the other people in this community talking to the regular person on the street who knows nothing about any of this stuff.
That's
right? There's almost like a level gap of just information, but I have a lot of empathy and I like people. So there's like a part of it that, like, as an example, my frustration isn't necessarily frustration with you. It's actually frustration with the story. It's frustration with the lore. It's frustration with the interpretation and with that, because I do know firsthand where it comes from, and that upsets me, right? Because, like I said, I have no problem accepting or even believing that you went through something as a kid, right? And you do have every right to know exactly what has been done to you. And it offends me that, maybe not you, but I'm going to use you as the example. So if I hear you believe it's something that I know that it's not, I have an emotional response to that. I really do. Like, it's almost like I get offended, and that's on your behalf, because I kind of wish I could, give you a day in my head, let you see through my memories so you could see that, because I know that would help you. And I have a lot of experience of watching people run around in this SSP community and never help themselves. Right? Most people I know who do kind of come to terms with that end up moving forward and getting some healing out of the end of the deal. That's more proof in the result for me. So that's where my emotional response to you came from. It's like I have this problem, this trigger where I get defensive of people, and I don't iterate it quite clearly and thank you for making me do that. That, like, the bottom line here is there is a lot of abuse and horrible fucking things being done to humans.
Yeah, I think we can agree on that, and I think that what we need to do is just we have to keep talking. I wish that I don't think the division in this community helps anyone. You get on I'm just being blunt here. You get on a show and you say, by the way, you guys, you're all fucking delusional. Like, come on. Like, obviously that's going to get some feathers ruffled, and you did.
But again, that's not what I said, and that's why I kept saying the interpretation and the representation is off.
And I don't mean to misrepresent you. I'm sorry. But you basically...
But I'll do it again. Right? And that's not a fault of yours. It doesn't make you a bad guy. It's just emotional response, right? But that is what has happened in those situations, like the DID comment, right? Like, if you just look at what I said objectively and don't take it personally, there was no need for that entire blow up, right? It's actually a comment in defense of someone like yourself who has DID, because there's a lot of people out there who claim that they do that don't. All right. And it's getting to the point where, police, doctors even are turning their nose up at people who say that they have it, because of the amount of people out there who have self-diagnosed and run around the internet saying that they do.
Yeah, I think I just think that's a dangerous road to go down, because there are people who do have it.
Exactly.
And it's like the same thing with a lot of things. Like, it becomes popular, and people for some reason want to be a part of the community, and it's kind of bizarre behavior. But
that's not how you interpreted my comment. right? That is what my comment said, but that's not how you interpret it, because you were hearing it through this lens of emotion of this guy thinks my stories are bullshit, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I mean, man. Like that's all I'm really trying to point out by repeating all of that, is that happens. We're all guilty of doing that. It's not just you. We all do that. That's why the trivia method is important, so that we can make sure we're not doing stuff like that to the best of our ability. Because if you just objectively look at what I said, there was no need for all of that. You took it the way you did because you thought I was saying something I wasn't, right? But that's the example of why that type of thing is a problem. And yeah, why we talk to each other, right? Like, I didn't watch that whole video of ruining the ruiner that you made, but I watched enough of it to go like, I need to tell this guy that I'm sorry and that he's not like he maybe didn't hear me say something. But in that conversation, it wasn't that I didn't say the things that you needed to hear. It was, I was talking and I said something and you started hearing beep while I was explaining it. And so once that beep was gone, you could listen to my explanation. But while that beep was there, you couldn't, right? And that's just human. And that's the problem. So once again, it wasn't that I wasn't saying, it was just that you weren't able to interpret it correctly because of the emotional response. That is why I keep pointing that out. Not because I think you're a bad person because you do that. We all do that in some ways, but that is what has happened. Objectively, what I said is not how you interpret it.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, like,
That is so true. And I found that with almost everyone that criticizes me or puts words in my mouth, and I've seen it with you, they just don't listen to the full explanation of anything. They just hear that little snippet, that thing that they didn't want to hear, and then block out the rest and then make their presumptions and their accusations based off of that one little clip that they didn't want to hear.
Very true. It's normal human behavior. We do it. It's bias.
All right, we got like 5 more minutes of this bad boy. Let's run through this real quick.
that doesn't mean that, like, I don't know, man. I kind of resent that you say I'm doing this all for attention. I'm not doing this for attention. It's caused more negative attention towards me than anything. I've admitted to doing things that are pretty fucking terrible, and from the get-go, and I just kind of resent that. Like, yes, I wanted your attention. I wanted you to talk to me. I wanted this conversation to be had because it's extremely important. But that's what this all is to me. It's sure, okay, maybe I do want attention, but it's not just for the sake of attention. I want attention on this issue. This is an issue that's affecting people's lives. I deal with trauma. I have PTSD from it. It's not cool. And people deserve to know what reality is. And that's why we sat down on this conversation, is because it's better to talk about it and say what the differences are, and then people can reach their own conclusions. And for me, like, I think you did a really good job of saying what you needed to say, and you answered my questions really well. There's still stuff I could ask you, but I want to keep you forever. I am kind of curious about the Matrix simulation that you talk about a little bit, but we don't have to talk about that. It is interesting stuff, though. You can look up his videos. Shane the Ruiner, I believe it is on YouTube, the Ruiner author. He touches on it's fascinating stuff. We could spend a whole nother 30 minutes talking about it, and I don't want to waste any more of your time, but people should look into that. It's just kind of, Shane talks about how we are living in a simulation. Would that be correct?
Yes. And that's and I take a stance with that, where it doesn't matter whether anyone agrees or disagrees or believes it. I think that what we're dealing with is going to be the same either way. And in that particular case, and I reiterate this many times in the video, that it's something that I said because too many people had come to me with it, right? So I just wanted to kind of speak.
I think there's something there. I found all those videos really interesting. I think I watched all of them. You had more than one, and that's something I wanted to talk about a little bit, but because I think it might have a connection to whatever is happening to us. But I think that people can find your videos and look into it on their own. You're not the only person who's talked about this. But yeah, I just want to thank you for coming on the show, and I think this went pretty good. I mean, could have went worse, right? So
absolutely. I don't know. I get animated like that, but I'm frustrated, like I admitted, but like it's not a personal thing. It's not like I dislike you in any sort of way.
Well, I
And
appreciate
I
a
feel like
person
that's the kind of filter that a lot of, not just you, but a lot of other people are kind of listening to my words through right now, is that I have some type of personal issue with any of you. I don't, right? Like I really don't. If
well, yeah, what we're talking
else-
about is important. You're gonna get impassioned talking about it. I think that's normal. You know, especially when we're not agreeing on everything or seeing eye to eye, but yeah, it's normal. We're human beings.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, we could definitely talk again because you know, there's other topics that kind of go along with it that, you know, are confusing. Like you brought up star seeds as an example. And and another thing I wanted to bring up, like you guys realize like Paul Hellyer, Dr. Paul Hellyer, who was the Canadian defense minister, who talked about how in his time in office, he was aware of that government knowing of at least 5 different ET races. That's
Yeah,
my
that guy.
uncle. That's my great uncle. I'm related to that man. Right. So it's not this idea that like I think that none of this exists is incorrect. This idea that they are using people to fight space battles is where I was saying that's the program. That's the part that isn't true. And yeah, it would be probably beneficial for us to talk again and kind of go into a little bit more of like specifics of things like star seeds or anything like that, or talk about simulation theory, any of that. Overall, man, like I'm glad that we did this because I don't want you or anyone else listening to feel like this is personal, because it's really not. Like I empathize with you even if I disagree with you, and I love you even if I don't necessarily respect what you're saying, right? So please, anybody else listening to this, if you have this feeling like every post I make is about you and you need to jump on my Facebook and comment, please stop. Because but just please stop, okay? Go.
Yes, please stop. That
Right?
is so annoying and frustrating.
You're so vain. I bet you think this song is about you. You know, it's one of those situations. It's really funny.
Oh my God, dude, it's so annoying. It's so annoying. And to your point, why do they all think that we don't like them? Like just because I think that their stories are fake, made up bullshit nonsense doesn't mean that I dislike them as a person. I don't hate them. I don't not like them. Right. But for some reason they take it that we are attacking them in some kind of way, which makes absolutely no sense to me
Well,
personally.
it makes no sense if they believe their own stories. You know, to me, that's more proof that they don't. So,
All right, we got like one more minute.
or someone else, okay? And leave my
Oh
alone.
gosh. Yeah. Yeah, knucklehead.
Yeah, right.
I know what you're talking about. I never got along with that guy either. I think he's a dick. But you know, another thing we of many that apparently we have in common.
Yeah,
But
I can openly be an asshole, and I apologize for that. I know I speak in generalities, and I can come across as a bit of a dick at times when I do that. I apologize for the people who get offended by that. I don't think I'm going to change though, because I only feel bad if I'm wrong, and until I'm wrong.
yeah, and you do say too, another thing you say, and I agree with you. The proof is in the pudding. Time is the healer of all wounds and is a teller of all truths. And if there is a secret space program and life on Mars and all this other crazy shit, we will find out about it. If it's all a fucking lie and there's something else going on underneath our noses, I believe we will find out about it. I mean, there's too many people talking about it. Too many of the hatches has been opened. So it's like, I just am here. This is disclosure. Whether like that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to disclose things. So I think we did a good job of that today. Thank you for coming on the show.
Cheers, brother. It was fun.
Cheers.
Yeah. Anytime you want to do it again, let me know.
I will. Thank you. And I'll just, I guess, stop recording and then say a little goodbye.
Whew, made it through. We did it.
We did it. Yeah, I mean, it's not the first conversation like that I've had to have, and you know, it kind of, we had this saying It's like some men need to be hung and some just need to be handed enough rope. The idea being that they would, do it themselves, right? And I feel like ideas are the same, right? Some ideas do need to be hung, but others just need to be given enough rope and they'll do it themselves. And I think at this point in time, with the whole secret space program community and the revolving seesaw of whistleblowers coming through that and space Jesuses and assets, and I think the game has run its course, and it's time to maybe refocus on some things that actually matter, and maybe hold some of the humans accountable for the human things that they do instead of always trying to blame it on some other planet or some other ET, right? And especially look in the mirror once in a while, because I know a lot of us really don't like to do that. We'd rather project onto our enemies in the community or speakers in the community or whatever that is, instead of, just kind of coming to terms with the result. Like I said, the proof in the result.
And I do want to give Archeum Raw a little bit of credit in this interview that you did with him, because he was saying some good things, right? But he was not relating it to the topic at hand, right? He was still trying to fit it into the category of secret space program, 20M back program, fighting aliens in space, and age regression, right? And that's really unfortunate that he's talking about, that he believes that screen memories are a thing, that implanted memories are a thing, but false memory syndrome isn't a thing somehow. I don't know how that makes any sense at all. And then there's a few other things that he spoke about through the manipulation and it being all MK Ultra, but he's still not relating it and putting two and two together, that it's because of all those things that the secret space program, 20 and back and stuff, is a giant cover up for what's actually happening. So I did want to give him, he's on the right track there with a few things. He's just not relating it to the overall thing that me and you have been talking about.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's a conspiracy burrito, right? That all the individual ingredients within that are also conspiracy snowballs, right? Where it's like they start off as this big, but then it rolls around for a few years and it's this big. And then it gets passed over to someone else who rolls it across their front lawn and now it's this big, and so on and so on. And then yeah, this newest version of the secret space program just wraps all of that up into a nice burrito. And it's like, yeah, it's encroachable, and that's part of the problem, right? It's that, it's so out of focus that it's not helping in the grand scheme of things, right? It would be better if we could really focus it down to a very clear signal instead of just producing more noise.
I agree. And they always have this fallback plan too, as well. Whenever you try and discredit or say that, the space adventures, which are very clearly not real and did not happen, and you've explained that perfectly of the reason why, they have the MK Ultra and the torture and all this stuff to fall back on. And that's a part of the conspiracy burrito. And that's why everything is all wrapped up nice and tight in this little box, so that when one thing has been disproven and has been discredited, they have 20 other things to fall back on. It's really genius. Honestly, it's kind of genius.
And you can see actually in that conversation how, every time it would get to a point where logic was in the way, he would try to bring my emotions into it by talking about the abuse associated with it, right? It's like, don't pay attention to that, look over here and feel bad, right? And that's another kind of tactic that they all kind of employ, is where they reach the end of it making sense. They're like, but, torture, rape, whatever it is, insert violation X, whatever that is. And yeah, that's, puts in a position where you can say things, or he could say things to me like that I'm gaslighting victims, right? Or something like that, or I'm really not. But, you know, yes, some people get abused, and yes, some people lie about that.
I agree so much. We've been on here for a fair minute, my friend. Let people know where they can find you online, and I'll plug that really quick, and I'll get it in the description.
Yeah, after the slash on Linktree / Shane_Sador, you'll find everything there.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Shane. Appreciate your time this evening. And for everyone else, thanks for watching and listening. Much love to everyone in the chat. Please be sure to hit the thumbs up button to help the channel in the YouTube algorithm. Share, subscribe, hit the bell icon as well for notifications. And remember, we're not only in a spiritual war, but a war on humanity. Stay aware, stay alert, keep love in your heart for everyone. Stay safe out there. And if you can see through the illusion, you are the solution. See you guys next time.